IB Nation, welcome to the Irish Breakdown Podcast, coming to you live on a Monday, which means, of course, we're here for the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. I am Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at AverageBreakdown.com. You all know if you tune into the Recruiting Hour each week, you get to hear my voice, you get to hear Sean Davis, you get to hear Brian Driscoll at times. We want to give you a little bit of a different voice today and talk a little Elijah Rushing today, who is a star defensive end out of South Point Catholic in Tucson, Arizona. So I want to bring my guy on, Mr. Max Torres, who is the publisher over at Ducks Digest, because if you all have been following the recruitment of Elijah Rushing, you know Notre Dame is obviously high in the running, already has an official visit set up for Notre Dame from June 9th to the 11th. And, of course, he already is eyeing an official visit to the University of Oregon as well. So welcoming Max Torres to the show. Max, appreciate you for hopping on, man. How's everything been going?
Been good. Thank you guys for having me, Ryan. You know, stoked to be on. I was texting you over the weekend, like, man, like I've really been getting into podcasting lately, trying to ramp it up on my end, covering recruiting, and you guys do a phenomenal job. I'm not even a Notre Dame fan, but I really feel like I tune into you and Brian like almost every day because you guys are always going. And the IB Nation really shows out. So stoked to be here and always excited to talk some recruiting.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. And we're excited to have you because I think that this is going to be a great thing, Max, because we're going to get multiple perspectives on this recruitment, right? Because obviously we know people can go look at the recruiting rankings. They can go look at the offer list. Everybody knows who Elijah Rushing is at this point. So we wanted to give you all, though, because you always hear the people of this channel, and you should go like, subscribe, hit that five stars on any podcast platform you do, and the notification bell, because we'll be having a lot more podcasts this week, including IB Nation Sports Talk every day at 6 o'clock Eastern. But we always give you all the Notre Dame perspective on Elijah Rushing. So we're going to talk a little bit of just recent updates from my side of things, you know, looking forward to the OV next month in June. But we also want to give Oregon a little bit of, you know, the perspective there, because Elijah has been high on Oregon, has been high on them for some time. They are one of the leading contenders along with the Floridas of the world for Elijah Rushing's, for his commitment at some point. So Max, I wanted to open it up to you and just give us just a little bit of details as far as Oregon's place with Elijah Rushing and just how much of a priority he has been for the Ducks in this process so far.
Yeah, Elijah Rushing has been a major priority for Oregon here in the 2024 recruiting class. And really, he's been a priority for Oregon, I'd say, even before Dan Lanning was hired. So this is another recruit that Oregon has kind of been playing the long game with, seeing that they were recruiting him pretty heavily before Dan Lanning was on staff, when Mario Cristobal was at the helm. And, you know, there's few recruits here in the 2024 class that you could say are a bigger priority for Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi, the defensive coordinator for Oregon. On defense, few guys are bigger priorities than Elijah Rushing. I got my words a little muddled there. But he's a really big priority for Oregon because, you know, you don't really find his body type out west. I feel like that's kind of a cliche in recruiting, especially when we're talking about Pac-12 schools, but it still rings true. You know, 6'6", 235 pounds. I think on the West Coast, you're kind of more looking at quarterbacks, wide receivers, some DBs. So this is a top tier edge rusher. We all know that if you watched Oregon last year, they could not get after the passer to save their lives. So you need to keep bringing in some dudes along that edge to get after the quarterback. And Elijah Rushing's not too far from Eugene. He's taken tons of visits. There's a lot of Arizona ties on this recruiting staff. And, you know, I think that Oregon's, like you said, in a really, really good spot here, if not potentially the team to beat here, at least right now.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, because I think especially you talk about last year for Oregon, the loss of Kayvon Thibodeau from the previous year. But this year, I mean, they got Jordan Birch from the transfer portal from South Carolina. They're definitely trying to bolster that defensive end room and that pass rush. There's no doubt about it. And Elijah Rushing would be a welcome addition to whatever school he comes to. So, Max, I really want to kind of just give the perspective from the Notre Dame side, because I think it's a great way to just kind of work off of each other and just show our perspectives on Elijah. So for people that haven't been following Elijah Rushing's recruitment for Notre Dame, I've been very honest about this one. They offered him last year following his sophomore season at South Point Catholic. They were on him pretty early, quickly took a recruiting visit to Notre Dame, probably like 2 weeks after his offer. There was a lot of interest there. He talked to me a lot about the Catholic school element, understanding the Notre Dame tradition, high academic kid. I think he's also like a 3.8 GPA kid. Like he's one of those kids, right? But I remember for a while there, after that, it just felt like the momentum started to die out a little bit from Notre Dame's side. Like Elijah was always a kid that liked Notre Dame. Notre Dame obviously had a high opinion of Elijah Rushing, but it just kind of seemed like the chances were dwindling a little bit until about a month ago, a little bit more than that, I guess now. Elijah Rushing set up an official visit to Notre Dame, and I had the chance to talk to him a couple times since that official visit was set up, and he spoke glowingly to me last week or the week before. All these weeks kind of merged together, it seems like now, man. But Elijah said basically that Notre Dame is amongst the schools. He said they're either, I forget how he phrased it, but he said either they are top 2 or they're the top school as far as being consistent with their communication and really making him feel like a priority. So I think Notre Dame's in this conversation. We've talked about it on this channel, though. I wouldn't necessarily predict him to end up with Notre Dame currently, but things can obviously change after the official visit. Let me ask, from your perspective, Max, because I know that, again, we don't have to hash out. He's an important player. He's a great player. Oregon wants him. But you mentioned Arizona ties a little bit into the recruiting side of the program. How often are they making Arizona recruits just priorities, just in general, from your experience so far? And I'm just trying to get my understanding of what their hold is on the state of Arizona out west.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And it's an important one in the recruiting discussion, because you're seeing a lot of these programs have their pipeline states, right? You constantly go to that state, or you constantly go to that area. For example, we've seen Oregon very active out here in Southern California. That's part of the reason I moved here from Eugene. But Arizona has been a really big priority for Oregon on the recruiting trail, even in the past couple cycles. Just to go through some of the names here, you had Ty Thompson, who was a high 4-star. Some services had him as a 5-star quarterback out of Mesquite High School in Chandler, Arizona in the 2021 class. He hasn't necessarily panned out just yet, but he was a big name out of the state of Arizona in recent years. You also had Brandon Buckner, who has since transferred. I'm trying to think of some other names here. Kyler Casper, huge wide receiver, 6'6", 205, kind of area. He reclassified.
Notre Dame liked Casper a lot, and then he reclassified and obviously opted for Oregon. But Notre Dame liked Casper a lot there for a while.
Yeah. So he was a massive name on the recruiting trail, and I think that he could be a breakout candidate for sure this year in the first year of the Will Stein offense in Eugene. And then you also have Cole Martin here in the most recent class in 2023. Got to meet him when we were out there in San Antonio at the Adidas All-American Bowl. So he's big. And then looking into even 2024, there's a lot of big names. Oregon's quarterback, Luke Moga, out of Phoenix, Arizona, Sunny Slope High School. He's a big name, and that dude's got some wheels, tied for a state title in the 100 meters. So that's not something you're hearing with the quarterback conversation all the time. And then you also have Miles Lockhart, who's a really big time defensive back, also out of Chandler, Arizona at Basha High School, former teammates with Cole Martin. So I think Ohio State leads there, but he took a visit to Oregon for the spring game. And then the other 2 names I'm going to mention, obviously Rushing is the face of the recruiting efforts in Arizona. And then you also have Christian Clark, who's a big-time running back, also out of Tucson, I want to say. Either Tucson or Phoenix. I'm getting my cities mixed up. Mountain Point High School. But, just running through the names, there's a lot of big guys that the Ducks are going after out of the state of Arizona.
Love it, man. And Notre Dame is also trying to also have a huge impact in Arizona. We talked about Rushing. They already have a commitment from Kennedy Urlacher in the 2024 cycle as well, out of Chandler, Arizona. Last year, Max, they also had a commitment for a time from Elijah Page, who ended up flipping to USC as well. So
from Pinnacle.
Yes, from Pinnacle. So Notre Dame has tried their best to get into Arizona, because that's one of those developing states as well. Me and Brian have talked about this a lot, but there's been like a little bit of a population shift where a lot of families are moving to Arizona, and you're getting a lot more talent over the last couple of years out of the state of Arizona, which has been absolutely huge. So I know that you've been able to talk to Elijah in the past, Max. I know there's not like a huge update, because we're talking about He has official visits set up. Things are probably going to really start to figure itself out after those official visits. But just from your general sense of talking to him, what is it? What is it about Oregon that maybe is drawing him to the University of Oregon, and why do you feel like he has shown interest in the Ducks so far?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just to kind of break down Elijah Rushing's interest in Oregon, I think the conversation really starts with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi. The whole idea of, what Lanning has done in recent years. Obviously the defense wasn't super impressive at Oregon in 2022, which is part of the reason there's such high expectations in 2023. It took a step in the right direction, I think, from what we saw in the spring game, but it's just a spring game. But yeah, you talk about winning a national championship with Kirby Smart at Georgia and that entirety of that 2021 defense getting on an NFL roster or getting drafted, whatever it was, just absolutely ridiculous. Lanning obviously had a significant hand in that. Can't give him all the credit, but he was obviously very involved. So the development factor is huge. Getting to learn under Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi, having multiple guys that can kind of coach him up at the edge position. The Ducks obviously have Kayvon Thibodeau that they can use to kind of market to recruit, I should say. Market's not the right word, but that they can recruit and say, hey, we've done it before. And we want you to be the next guy. DJ Johnson, even though he got drafted in the 3rd round, he's an edge rusher that came out of Oregon. He kind of dabbled on both sides of the ball, even was a standout tight end during the 2020 season. But I think that he's also going to factor into their, recruiting pitches for guys like Elijah Rushing moving forward, because, that's still development and that's still going to the NFL at the end of the day. So I think that that's part of the reason, the Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi factor and how long they've been recruiting him. And he's made it out to Eugene, so many times. But I don't want to ramble too much. I got a little bit more I can get into. Don't want to get into all of it right away.
Man, get into whatever you want to get into, man. We're just talking ball right now. So anything you want to drop on us, I appreciate it.
Sure. No, I mean, I think another one, maybe not in terms of like why he's interested in Oregon, but just tracking the visits and maybe a little bit more of a recent development. He was supposed to go to Oregon for their spring game at the end of April, April 29th, but there was a little bit of a scheduling conflict. He, had a prom to go to, so can't fault a kid there. High school only comes around once, but I think a lot of Oregon fans maybe saw that as a negative development, but I thought it was a good development because he ended up rescheduling the trip and coming out earlier. I think for like a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday or Sunday, Monday visit. Again, Ducks have some advantage here because they can, do a quick trip because it's not too far away. Although Eugene's not easy to fly to, I will say that. A lot of times they have to fly recruits into Portland and then drive them all over to Eugene. I don't know if Notre Dame has the same problem, but basically the point I'm making.
So in Notre Dame, they have the 2 airports. So they have, not 2 airports. They have 2 locations that they usually go into. Usually they'll go into Chicago, and that's like an hour and a half drive. But they also do have the South Bend Airport that is there, but it's a little tougher to get into there sometimes, man. I flew into there one time, and it was so expensive. I'm like,
is it a major airport? Or no?
No, it's like a very small little like airport or whatever. So like getting a plane in there is like a lot of money usually, you know what I mean? And not too affordable. But to your point, it's not when they go into Chicago, it's not bad though. It's like an hour and a half drive. You get the rental car and all that type of stuff. Like it's not too bad. Yeah, just for some context. Yeah.
Yeah, because Eugene only has like 5 or 6 gates, I want to say. I don't know if you've ever made it out there, but it's real tiny. So the point that I was making there with Rushing rescheduling his most recent visit to Oregon back in the month of April is, I mean, that recruiting visitor list for the spring game was unreal, like just absolutely insane. Marquee recruiting event of the year, over 100 recruits. The defensive line talent they had alone for that weekend was, the best that I've ever seen in my 4 years covering Oregon recruiting. So all that to say, they were able to give Rushing some really personal one-on-one attention, I think, during the week when he was out on that trip that was rescheduled. So I think that that's kind of maybe an under the radar benefit to rescheduling that trip is that, coaches have to juggle being around all these recruits, making all of them feel like a priority, or, the big guys feel like a priority. And I think that that is something that really helped them in this most recent visit. And then they're going to get an official early on in June, it looks like.
Yeah, man. It's going to be super interesting because I want to talk about the importance a little bit of both sides here because you mentioned obviously the pitch to a guy like Elijah Rushing is the proximity to home. It's that, they've been developing some pretty good edge rushers. I mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau. You mentioned DJ Johnson going in the third round this year as a pretty upside. I mean, that kid ran like in the 4.4s at like 270 pounds. Like it was absolutely insane. But I want to talk about like just kind of the impact on both sides here for me, Max, because for Notre Dame, getting a guy like Elijah Rushing would be monumental for a couple different reasons. One, he's a highly regarded recruit, considered a 5-star by a couple different outlets. He's also a position that Notre Dame needs to hit on more. They had Keon Keeley that was committed in the class last year. Obviously, they lost his commitment. They need to recruit that Viper position or that weak side defensive end, boundary end, however you want to phrase it for Notre Dame. They need to recruit that at a higher level, and they just haven't done that enough recently. I mean, Isaiah Foskey, who was drafted by Notre Dame this year, was drafted 40th overall. That was the highest a defensive end has been drafted at Notre Dame since 1997. So they haven't just been.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. They haven't had a first-round pick since Ronaldo Wynn in the late 1990s. So it's been a long time since Notre Dame's had that defensive end. They've had some defensive linemen. I mean, Jerry Tillery a few years ago was drafted in the first round, but he was obviously an interior defensive lineman. So they really need to bolster and develop that position a little bit of a higher clip, obviously. For Oregon now, I would love to hear your perspective on what commitment from Elijah Rushing would mean to that team. As you mentioned, obviously, pass rush needs to improve from last year, but I think Oregon's got a great opportunity here after Kayvon, after DJ Johnson, continuing to really develop defensive linemen to say like, hey, man, you want to play in the NFL? You want to be a top 10 pick? Come to the University of Oregon.
No, I mean, I feel like I couldn't have said it better myself. I think you hear the point floated out a lot. You definitely heard it when Mario Cristobal was the head coach about bringing the SEC to Eugene, which, again, is kind of becoming a cliche, but I feel like you're really seeing it, or at least the vision for it. I want Notre Dame fans to know that I'm not saying, oh, Oregon's the SEC of the West, because we haven't seen it yet. Anytime you get absolutely run over without hardly lifting a finger by Oregon State, and the end of your season kind of comes off, the wheels fall off. You can't say too much, but yeah, to your point, I think that a commitment from Elijah Rushing would be huge for the Arizona pipeline, would be huge for the edge rusher, component of Oregon's defense. You got Jordan Birch from South Carolina. Maybe he can get developed into a first-round pick. I mean, you see all the tools there. Certainly has the physical frame to be a difference maker in the Pac-12 at like 6'6", 275. But then you also have guys behind him. You have Mateo Uiagalelei, who I think I saw someone talking about in the comments. You get him over Ohio State and USC, kind of at the 11th hour. Again, the Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi factor in full effect over there. And then you have some other big names coming in from across the country. Ashton Porter out of the state of Texas is a big one. Blake Purchase, two-time Gatorade Player of the Year, 4-time national champion or state champion, out of Colorado. He's someone I'm really excited about. The Ducks had to hold off Deion Sanders late in that one. So you have all these big names that are coming in, and you're really just raising hopefully, I guess, you're raising your hit rate and you're increasing your chances of really building that big time defense and, showing this is the vision that I had when I was hired after coming over from Georgia, and, I'm delivering on it. At least that's kind of what you're hoping. And I think that the edge rusher spot is obviously one of the premier positions in football, whether we're talking college or NFL. I know you're huge into the NFL draft, so I'm trying to kind of learn a little bit more about that myself. So if you can develop an edge rusher, I think it really says a lot about, the competency of your coaches and, the overall development factor at your school.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you this, Max. I probably should have led off this entire conversation with this question because it's exciting times for both Notre Dame and Oregon. One, because they both have second-year coaches now who have kind of raised expectations, in my opinion. I mean, you're talking about Dan Lanning winning double-digit games in year one, have the recruiting finish that he had in year one as well. Marcus Freeman has really upped the recruiting efforts on the side of Notre Dame, and there's a lot of optimism about that future. What is your perspective, just kind of seeing the previous staff under Coach Cristobal before this? What is kind of the pulse of this program under Lanning? Like what makes him stand out as far as his recruiting prowess?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think one thing that you're seeing carry over from Cristobal to Lanning is the involvement of the head coach in a recruiting process, which I think is mentioned a lot, but maybe the impact of that goes a little bit under the radar. When you're a head coach and you have so many different things to do. I mean, I don't know how the guy finds time to sleep with everything that he's doing. But really kind of just from a recruiting standpoint, I talked about the caliber of guys that he's bringing in. I think that is already at or maybe even probably exceeding the level of Mario Cristobal. But I mean, he brought in a lot of really big time talents too. Kayvon Thibodeau was the number one player in the country on ESPN at least. We can debate those rankings and our thoughts on that later with ESPN. But like I just think that his recruiting strategy is I'm going to go swing for the fences with all the biggest names that I can, but I'm also going to make sure I'm prioritizing our hotbeds. And then the Ducks pushing further and further east, I think, is very indicative of the direction of this program, because usually you think the further east that you push, the harder it's going to get, which is probably true. But I think that, you see what they're doing in Texas with a couple of commitments from guys out of there. You have Tyler Turner was in the 2023 class, but now you have Aaron Flowers, a safety out of Texas, and Jackson Ford, a tight end out of Texas. And then you have them going all the way over to the DMV to get Ife Obadegwu on Sunday morning, an All-American corner. So I just think that the recruiting strategy has been just as relentless under Dan Lanning as it was in Mario Cristobal's era. But I'm actually thinking about doing a podcast on this week. I think that Dan Lanning is going to sign the best recruiting class in Oregon history. The more that I look at it, and the more that I talk to sources around that program, the buy-in is just on a different level. And you're seeing all the results, and especially in the era of name, image, and likeness. I'm not attributing the success to name, image, and likeness, but it's hard to find a more marketable brand than Oregon. I mean, it's just it's Nike U, and I'm not saying that that's going to win you a lot of games, but sure as heck doesn't hurt you.
Yes. Now, it doesn't hurt you. You got the brand behind you. Obviously, you have the money behind you. Like, that stuff does not hurt you, obviously. Oh, great point that you made, Max, and I want to hit on a little bit more from the Oregon side. Is it fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but is it fair to say that Lanning has taken more of a national approach to recruiting? Because you mentioned hitting the DMV. You mentioned, you didn't mention, but they're also going after Jalen McLean, who's a safety out of the state of New Jersey, right here, a local guy to me. You talked about Texas. You're talking about some West Coast guys as well. Does it seem like it's more nationally oriented as far as how he's targeting different regions since he took over?
I don't really think so, because I think you saw a really heavy national approach under Mario Cristobal. And you're just seeing Dan Lanning pick up right where Cristobal left off in that regard. And I always think it's kind of interesting to rewind the clock a little bit when we're talking Oregon recruiting, because I really think you can attribute the national approach, not in totality, but a pretty significant portion of it, to Willie Taggart, who, wasn't really a success at Oregon, if we want to put it lightly. But who did he bring over? Mario Cristobal, who really just took that thing to the next level. Taggart got them involved in Florida. Cristobal got them involved in Florida as well, but also seeing them push into states like Alabama and Maryland as well. And you're seeing Lanning getting a commitment from, Ife yesterday out of Maryland. They're also heavily involved with Jordan Ross, the top player in Alabama. And then they got Dante Dowdell, running back out of Mississippi last cycle. So I think you're seeing just as much, if not more, of a national approach. So I guess that might be walking back my answer. But Cristobal is national, Lanning's national, and he's just trying to push it even more. But I think maybe specifically into your neck of the woods in the Northeast, Tyser Denmark, wide receiver out of Philadelphia, and then, like you mentioned, Jalen McLean as well. So they're going far and wide, and they're not taking no for an answer. You're not going to get a yes from everybody, but you got to at least try. And then you still have those hotbeds and pipelines that you can kind of fall back on, so to speak.
Yeah, man, I just love the perspective, because, I mean, usually you'll see the schools just kind of really work the region perspective. But for like Notre Dame, they're in a completely different bag. I mean, they're in Indiana, where there's going to be some good players out of Indiana.
Same situation with Oregon.
Yeah, Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I mean, like you're going to get a couple good players out of the state of Oregon, but Notre Dame's in Indiana where it's like, yeah, you'll get a Drake Bowen every once in a while. You get a Jalen Smith every once in a while. That's fantastic. But for the most part, you have to reach into different markets, right? So Notre Dame is really attacking Texas. They're trying to attack Arizona. They're getting down into Georgia a little bit more this class as well. I mean, I just did a thing, Max, where it's like they had 14 commits in 2024 from 10 different states, right? So of the 14 commits are from 10 different states, which is pretty wild to think about, man. And obviously Notre Dame is they're a national brand and they have to touch different spots or else they won't have a great product at the end of the day. I mean, you can't just recruit Indiana kids all day. They need to touch Chicago at times. They need to go out west. They need to go down south. They need to go a little bit of everything. So I just love the perspective of that Oregon is also one of those teams that is trying to touch different markets. It's not just kind of staying strictly regional and being able to touch. So I think we had a question in the chat for you, Max. So first time on, man.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's get a couple of these before I let you get out of here. So we had Archer who asked directly to you. He said, Max, how much of a player do you expect Oregon to be in the Aaron Scott recruitment? Of course, Aaron Scott is the cornerback 2024 out of Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Scott is a really big name. Obviously, at corner in this class. I think he just got Adidas All-American status this morning, as a matter of fact. So, he's a big name that the Ducks are going after. And he was recently in town, not for the spring game, but he did get to stop in on a spring practice before that spring game. So we got that look firsthand at the program. I mean, I haven't gotten too much intel on him in particular. And I think that there are guys out west that they probably have a more realistic shot at, like Dakota Fields out of Gardena, California, Unipero Serra. Ducks got Roderick Pleasant out of that same school last year, and looking like an Oregon SC battle for him. But as far as Scott goes, I mean, just look at what you're kind of trying to accomplish on the surface here. I want, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say he's the number one player in Ohio this year. Maybe I'm wrong.
So. I believe so. He's a 5-star by a couple platforms. Yeah.
He's up there, case in point. So Aaron Scott is a major player in Ohio, which leads you to believe, okay, the Buckeyes aren't going to let him get out of state without a fight. And that's really hard. And I feel like there's guys out of Ohio that, commit to Ohio State or something. And I've never heard of them. And it's like, oh, he's like top 5 at his position or top 10 at his position. So
Ohio's really good football, man. Really good football in the state of Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and I feel like that kind of happens with Indiana a little bit as well. Like I don't know as many guys from there, and then they go to Notre Dame or maybe somewhere in the Big Ten. But to answer the question, I think that they're going to be players. I mean, you can't really count them out for anybody, just because, like we talked about, that brand. And then looking at corner, sent Christian Gonzalez to the first round to the Patriots. Demetrius Martin's one of the best developers of talent, I think, that you have in the Pac-12, and he won Pac-12 Recruiter of the Year last year. Just a phenomenal recruiter and coach. So I think that Oregon's going to get involved as much as they can until they, maybe don't see it as realistic, or maybe it ends up being realistic. But like I mentioned, there's guys out west that I think they probably have a better shot at, with Fields being one of them. Miles Lockhart, who I mentioned, out of the state of Arizona. Ohio State, he previously told me on record that Ohio State was a leader for him, but he visited for the spring game. Maybe you can make up a little bit of ground there. Wisconsin's also involved. I'm trying to think of other corners off the top of my head, but those are the names that are coming to mind right now. So I think they're going to be a player, but it's a tough task, when you're going up against the Buckeyes in their state.
For sure. And a couple good names there. Notre Dame offered Dakota Fields. They were on him a little bit early on. Obviously didn't get much traction there. Miles Lockhart is also a guy that they took a long look at, but I don't think they ever ended up offering him. So great information, Max. I'm going to bring up this last question before they get out of here. I know Archer452, again, said Oregon getting Mateo Uyunglele right at the end of the last cycle still makes me angry. He's an Ohio State fan, by the way. Ohio State fans are convinced he got a big bag up front. I'd love to hear Max's thoughts on that. Max, I don't want you to kind of speak too much on like how much money and how, that type of situation. But I guess a good way to maybe phrase this a little differently is how important is the NIL side to what Oregon is now building structurally from a recruiting side of things?
Sure. Yeah, we can hit on a couple of those things there. I mean, I think the NIL part is pretty big in terms of just, it's big in terms of, if you want to be a top recruiting power in college football, you're going to have some strategy in it, right? And I'm not speaking specifically to Oregon here because, like, I know Michigan is murdering things on the recruiting trail, to put it lightly. Like, they are just blowing up, and they've been very adamant that we're not going to pay players to come here. Is that maybe happening? I don't know. I don't have any sources out in Ann Arbor. But it's, I think it's a big part of the puzzle. And, kind of from what I've heard, talking about, kind of the approach at Oregon is more so saying, this is what you can do here. Look at the brand that we built as far as Nike. Not saying that Oregon is exclusively responsible for that, but when you're thinking of any school with ties to Nike, it's Oregon. So I think it's more so looking at the ability that you have to build a brand at Oregon with Nike. That's huge. You see the NIL collective, Division Street is playing a big role in terms of just generating deals for athletes once they get to the University of Oregon. They're dropping new clothes all the time called Ducks of a Feather. So, like, that's a little bit of insight there on the NIL side of things. But as far as Mateo's recruitment, this was a really interesting one, Ryan, because I want to say I kind of got a front row seat to it because I was around Bosco a lot. They actually played in Eugene, one of their non-conference games. They just wiped the floor with Central Catholic, I think it was, from Portland, who had Riley Williams, who was a top tight end, but he transferred to IMG. But with Mateo, I was like around Bosco a lot last year. I knew Oregon was involved, but every time I talked to him, I never really got the sense that, oh yeah, this guy's going to be a Duck. Like, Oregon's going to be really hard to beat in this one. Because, you have Ohio State with Larry Johnson, who's just an absolutely awesome developer of talent. Buckeyes got JT Tuimoloau over Oregon in 2021. For those of you guys that remember that, I'm sure Archer was celebrating that one. But yeah, with Mateo, I never got the sense that Oregon necessarily led. USC was always going to be a factor, with USC right in their backyard. And then Georgia even got involved a little bit towards the end. And Mateo told me he reached out to Georgia. So that was kind of interesting. But this was a really, really interesting recruitment to follow. And again, I think it's the family environment was something that he really loved. His dad has also spoken extensively on that. He grew up an Oregon fan. So, you hear kids saying that all the time on the West Coast. So it's kind of a butchered point, but you have that element of it that maybe he really did want to fulfill a childhood dream. And then, like we've been talking about with the edge rusher development and guys like Elijah Rushing, I think that you just see the potential with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi to really take it to the next level. So that Mateo recruitment was an interesting one. It caught me by surprise. I was actually traveling out of the country, and I woke up at like 5 a.m. and I rolled over and checked my phone. Okay, something probably happened because of the time change. And I'm seeing these predictions rolling in for Oregon to get Mateo, and I'm like, wow, is this really going to happen?
I'm pretty sure you texted me when all that madness was happening, because the Peyton Bowen stuff happened too,
Oh my
right?
God,
Where it popped up, it was like, what the heck is happening, man?
That was a nightmare. Because they committed within like 10 minutes of each other, and I was like, what is going on? So that was wild. But the thing on Mateo is, like, I wrote about his commitment, and I was like, this is the guy that you bring Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi to Oregon to get. In the talent-rich area of Southern California, from the national champion St. John Bosco Braves. Yep. I'm hopefully going to make it out there this week for their showcase, and they're, I'm sure Notre Dame's going to have somebody from at that showcase. I saw Chancey Stuckey there last year, actually. Matter of fact.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, they're high on Kingston, Viliamoasa. They were high on Peyton Woodyard for a long time. Obviously, he committed to Georgia. I know he's taken a couple visits now, obviously, so maybe things will open up a little bit there. So it was very informative though, Max. I really appreciate you hopping on here, obviously, man. Before I let you go, because a lot of great questions that were brought up, a lot of great talking points on your end, please tell Notre Dame fans, because the great thing about this channel is I'd like to think that this channel is extremely educated and they want information, right? So I think that understanding the other really good programs in college football is important. So if they want to catch up on Oregon football, anything that you got going on, and maybe just a little insight into what Oregon is building there out in Eugene, where can they find all your work?
Yeah, no, appreciate the opportunity to plug the work, Ryan. So you can find me on my website, ducksdigest.com, covering the Ducks for Sports Illustrated over on Fan Nation. And then you can also find me here on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres. I like to do my podcast, the Ducks Dish podcast, which is incredibly recruiting heavy, recruiting focused. I like to think I do that at a pretty high level and kind of like to offer a different perspective from some of the other outlets here in the market. Then you can follow me on Twitter, that name right there on your screen at mtorresports. I'm out of Long Beach, so I'm going to be going to a lot of showcases this week in the Southern California area, Mater Dei, St. John Bosco, like covering a lot of the top guys in the area, whether Oregon's going after him or Notre Dame's going after him. I'm there for all of it, and I just want to tell part of the story. So that's where you guys can find me.
Yeah, well, and I'll definitely be hitting Max up, obviously, when he's out to see Kingston, when he see Jason Robinson here very soon. Great source of information, Max. We'll definitely have to have you back on very soon, man. But thank you so much for joining the Irish Breakdown podcast today. This was a blast, brother.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And I'll have to get you over on my channel because there's a lot of overlap with, Oregon and Notre Dame, whether it's recruiting or kind of their big picture goals. Notre Dame's obviously very accomplished, but they're both trying to get back to that natty. And I think they have a lot of similarities that, kind of make it interesting to talk about.
Oh, no doubt, man. No doubt. We'll have plenty of conversations. Again, go follow Max at mtorresports on Twitter. Make sure to give him a nice round of applause in the chat, man. If you can give a little bit of a hand clap it or say what's up. It's great info as always, Max. Talk to you soon, man.
All right. Appreciate you for having me, Ryan. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that is Max Torres. Again, a little shout out to the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation family here, giving us a little insight about Oregon football, and of course, focusing on the Elijah Rushing recruitment, which has been very interesting. He already has official visits to Notre Dame and Oregon coming up very soon. So I think that was an interesting conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it, but don't go anywhere because we got a lot more for you on today's show. Make sure before we get into a little bit of a fun segment, you hit that like button. Subscribe to the podcast. 5-star reviews if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform. The board is at irishbreakdown.com, which is below me. Make sure to go check it out. I just had a nice little update on an official visitor that'll be coming here in early June. A nice linebacker recruit for Notre Dame that they've been on for a while. So please make sure to go to boards at irishbreakdown.com. But we're going to get into the next segment of this podcast. We're going to call it Carson's Corner. Folks, so I wanted to start something a little bit fun here, okay? If you have watched this channel before, you know that we've had now on multiple shows, we've had Mr. Carson Hobbs on, who is a 2024 cornerback commit out of Archbishop Moeller in the state of Ohio. Carson, for people that don't follow recruiting, is one of the key recruiters in Notre Dame's 2024 class. Great young man, great kid. So you know what I wanted to do? To give you all a little bit of a glimpse into the Notre Dame side from the recruit's perspective and from Karson Hobbs' perspective in general. We're starting a new segment on this podcast. It's called Carson's Corner. I caught up with Karson Hobbs this past week to talk a little bit about his process right now, recruiting, and give you guys a little bit behind the scenes in Notre Dame recruiting. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Karson Hobbs, 2024 cornerback commit for the University of Notre Dame. Hope you all enjoy this interview. Welcome, everyone, to the Irish Breakdown podcast. Doing a little bit of a fun exercise here. Wanted to start to give you guys a little bit of an insight deeper into some of the future stars for Notre Dame football. So I've developed a good relationship here with Karson Hobbs, who, of course, is the star defensive back out of Archbishop Moeller in the state of Ohio. So we were kicking around this idea a couple weeks ago, starting a little bit of a Carson's Corner, give you guys a little bit of insight into what's going on in Carson's daily life. I also think that this would be a cool thing to just kind of get a recruit's perspective on everything recruiting, of course, but more than anything, the offseason, football, just a little bit of fun here. So, Karson, I appreciate you for joining the show, man. How's everything been going?
Of course. Thanks for welcoming me. Everything's been going pretty solid. Just getting into a smooth track season. I think we got a pretty good 4x1 team this year, so hoping to win a state ring. Other than that, I'm trying to get these recruits getting on board and get us the #1 class in the nation.
I love it, man. I love it. And this is really cool because I've had Karson, of course, on the show before as a guest, but he's my co-host now, man, for a little bit here, which is going to be cool. So, Karson, I want to ask, man, just a little bit about the latest with you. You just mentioned you kind of doing the track season stuff and everything, man. So just update us a little further, man. Like, it sounds like you guys are having a really nice track season. I see some of the track times, man. It seems like you're putting in a little bit of work there. So how's just the off season been for you?
Yes, sir. So off seasons consist of, I think we got back on the field in January. So January through March, I was more field work, gym work, film work, gym work. And then as soon as March hit the corner, started getting into the track season, and Michigan commit Jordan Marshall, Arkansas State commit Tanell Bryant, and then another guy named Lamont Cox, us four. We actually are loading up this 4x1, and we're trying to break not only the school record, but potentially the state record this year. We all run under sub-11. I split 10.5, Tanell split 10.3, Jordan split 10.5, Lamont split 10.7. So we were rolling this year, and we realized that I think mid-April, kind of early April, to be honest, that once we ran 42 flat and 58-degree weather, that I think we could have a real shot to be a true contender to go win the state. And I guess running track is played a huge role not only in my track life but in my football life, because when you convert the speeds to one another, it just makes you overall a faster player. And I feel like having track in my background now and being able to go to college saying that I'm an all-state track runner and athlete is just huge for playing defensive back. Playing, a couple guys going to run 4.2, 4.3s when I get to Notre Dame, I'm going to have the speed to be able to keep up with them. So, that's kind of where this offseason is going towards the summer. Go out mid-June, early June, start to train with the team a little bit, and just continue really just to work on hard path and getting ready for this senior season coming up.
That's dope, man. I'm gonna geek out for a little bit here because I've coached track actually for many years. I was a thrower coach in the track and field spectrum, but
right.
I know how impressive obviously those splits are, man. 10.5. What leg of the 4x1 are you running?
I'm the first leg. I opened it up, so I got the longest one.
Oh, nice, man. Oh yeah, you got. Oh yes. So your split's a little bit off, but that's awesome, right, man. That's dope. Is this your first year running track, or is this something that you've been doing consistently?
I've been doing since my freshman year of high school.
Nice. And is in just kind of an update, Karson, as far as like the full sports background outside of track, football. What other sports have you kind of just played during your life?
Grew up playing baseball. I actually did lacrosse for 1 year. That was not for me, but my dad, I guess, put me in a couple golf camps over the summers growing up. But it's really been basketball, baseball, and then I kind of had to narrow it down to track and football in high school, what was going to benefit me the most for the next level. And I wasn't too good at basketball anyways, but I was a pretty good baseball player. So,
well, that makes sense too, man. You're a defensive back, so you got to be able to track the football down the field and everything, and maybe a little bit of that baseball experience. So it makes total sense.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Karson, because I know that you were obviously just on campus for the Blue Gold game. I was there as well, and it was a little bit of a dreary day outside. It was hailing a little bit during the game, but whew, talk to me about that experience, though, man. As a committed player, being back for a spring game, what was that experience like for you that weekend?
Well, it's great because not only are you a commit, now you're really part of Irish family, you could say, and coming in to the game, a lot of fan love, a lot of people knowing who you are. So I just feel like that was just one of them things that I dreamed of, and it was really here, and getting to spend time with all the commits, and potentially Micah Gilbert and Bryce Young were there, so they're commits now, but getting to really build connections with them and just keep the class getting stronger. I think the best thing about this all is the relationships you build with people, and I think that's where we're going to get most of our recruits and athletes at. So doing either one of those, and we got Urlacher. Shoot, we got Urlacher. We're really building this class.
Yeah, and I definitely want to ask you about a couple of the guys that you just mentioned, because I know you were obviously there with them in person. Let me ask you, Karson, this, I guess, maybe unique to this visit particular, was there anything that you got to do this time around that maybe you hadn't experienced before, as far as like just kind of the itinerary, I guess, on campus?
I wouldn't say there was anything different we got to do. It's just we really got more individual time with the commits.
Nice. That's awesome, man.
I think that was just great. Making sure everybody's locked in. We all have the same end goal to build a winning class and go win a national championship when we get there.
Well, and let me ask you about a couple of the kids, obviously, that were now committed players. But before I do, I want to ask you, because you have kind of become, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think most people believe me, that, watch you on Twitter and just kind of your interactions with all the recruits on campus and everything. But you are one of the key recruiters in your class now that you have been a committed player. I mean, you, Cam Williams, CJ Carr, like you guys are putting in work. Can you talk to me about the relationships that you've been building with guys like that, the guys that are a little more outspoken, guys that are really trying to, have the similar goal to you to put together the best class in the country?
I feel like it's just really a kind of, like I was saying, building that relationship. So not only is it CJ and Cam, but Aeneas is trying to get in. And we also have a 24 group chat. So when
Nice.
we see a really good commit, boom, we throw him out there. Then we all go on his Instagram. We flood his Instagram. Come on, come on. We flood his Twitter. And it's just, I think it's just one of the newer things we can do. And it's just, with Cam and CJ, with they're having such a high profile, I know they're going crazy in the recruiting rankings right now. Two great players, and it's truly just it's just great be able to work with them and be able to try to get these guys on board.
And what was it like, I guess, for the first time being on campus? Because you have met a couple of the commits, obviously, in the past, but was there a commit or two in the class now that maybe you met for the first time this time around?
Anthony Knapp, Jack Larson, this is the first time we really got to talk. Bryce Young, Micah Gilbert, my first time, but it's like I knew they were family when the first time I met them. We clicked.
Nice.
These are people that I can talk to for hours. Like we just all click, and that's when you realize like they're really meant to be here, and we're all meant to be here, and we all here for one common goal. So it just felt great being able to see them guys, and then not them announcing. I think we got 4 or 5 commits in the last week.
Yes, yeah, 5 commits in the last week.
We're up to 14, so we're rolling. I love it. Great.
Well, what was the crazy part, Carson, was to start out that weekend. The first commit that actually happened was a 2025 kid. It was Davion Dixon out of Florida.
That was random, they said.
Yeah. Did you meet him at all, or you didn't get a chance to meet him down there?
No, sir. So he was there actually we got there. He was there that Friday, and we got there that Saturday. So
Gotcha.
Everybody heard about it, but I mean, hey, welcome him. I'm happy. Like, bring a smile to my face seeing that. So,
yeah. Well, I know you as a defensive back, man. You like when you get some good defensive linemen up front. That means the ball's coming out quicker. That means more interceptions your way. So,
100%, we need that.
Yeah. Well, and let me talk to you about the first 2024 commit that happened that weekend. Because for people that don't know, there were a couple silent commits that happened. Obviously, Bryce and Micah had committed on the visit, but the first one we got, who was a player that wasn't on campus that weekend, was Cole Mullins, who's a defensive end out of the state of Georgia. Have you had a chance to chop it up with him at all in the group chat? Anything at all so far you can tell us about Cole?
Yeah, we said a few words in the group chat. I would like our relationship to build closer towards, we get to signing day and get to being on campus, but we got a lot of time. So I think he's definitely a great pickup. We needed that position, and he's the guy we needed to fill it. So it was a great pickup for us.
And what's it like, Carson? Because obviously you're an Ohio guy. CJ's a Michigan guy. Cam's an Illinois guy. So there's a lot of North in this conversation, right? A lot of Midwest guys. But then you're also getting, the Anthony Knapps of the world from Georgia, Cole Mullins from Georgia. Leonard Moore is obviously a Texas kid. You guys have really touched a lot of different parts of the country. What's that like, just kind of being around such a, I guess, diverse type of people, I guess?
It's brand new environments from brand new places. Leonard's the first person I've ever met from Texas. I don't know anybody from Illinois, so CJ was the first. I know a couple people from Chicago, but it's just being able to have all these different areas and all these different places come to Notre Dame, and really, you see a true special bond there, because for a kid to be able to go 12 hours away from home and really trust the family and the process that he's getting into just says a lot about us, especially because, he's coming to play in the cold. He's not used to it, but he's making sacrifices to come be part of something great. And I think if any recruit is listening to this, if you see a guy from Texas or you see a guy from Georgia come, why can't you be next?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And Notre Dame obviously is still on guys like Kedron Young, who's a star running back out of the state of Texas. There's a lot of guys, man. Let's roll through a couple of the other commits that decided on the Irish that weekend real quick, Carson. So you mentioned Bryce Young already, who, of course, for people that follow his channel, they know it's Bryant Young's son, who was a all-time great at Notre Dame, is in the NFL Hall of Fame. What was your impressions of Bryce? Just kind of give us a little insight into your relationship that you guys are developing, and what type of person do you feel like he is?
First thing I thought was he was a big old giant. This dude's 6'7", 245, 250. I mean, he's really, really, he's huge. He's huge. But he was first time I was like, what's the word? You coming? He put his arm around me. He said, just know we locked in. And I was like, oh, shoot, we done got another one. And it felt great seeing that. So he's super cool. His dad's a legend. So
Yep.
He got 50% of his Jazz genes already. I can't wait to see what he produces on the field for us. It's going to be great.
Well, and not only was Bryant Young there, who was an all-time great, there was a lot of alumni that were on campus. Did you get a chance to chop it up with some former Notre Dame greats?
Oh, I'm trying to think. DeJuan Francisco, I'm not sure if you know him. He's actually from Moeller, and he played at Notre Dame. And Walter Francisco. So the Francisco brothers, I guess, have been mentors to me and my whole kind of journey with Notre Dame and everything. So those are kind of the legends I really got to talk to.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. I love when you guys have kind of like a similar background. That's really neat. Well,
Jerome Bettis.
Oh yeah, I mean Jerome Bettis Jr. was there too, right?
Right, that's
so you
crazy.
Had to chop it up.
It's so like when you get to this point, like you look up to these people your whole life, see them doing crazy things, and then boom, one day you just meet them. It's just like so unexpected, but it shows the players that have came through this program and why we're such a high level class program.
Yeah, man. And a couple talented wide receivers that were on campus. You mentioned Micah Gilbert is one that just committed, as well as Isaiah Canyon, who is the star receiver. And I can't wait for the battles that you guys get during practice, man, because Isaiah is like 6'3", can run a little bit. You know, Mike is a big dude. Talk to me about those two wide receivers, man, because there are guys that you are going to see every single day in practice when you get on campus finally.
Right, and you know, that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to come here. I wanted to go against the best receivers in the country day in, day out. And I feel like two guys like that with the height, with the speed, that's what I love to see. And I love the physicality, and I'm with it all. So I think not only will we have a great relationship before we come in, but we're only there to make each other better and to make each other better for the right reasons only. And that's playing the games together and go win national championships together. So it's just step-by-steps and things we do in practice. And those are the guys I want to line up against every day. So I'm glad because they're both some dogs.
Yeah, no, they are that. I mean, Mike is the small guy there, and he's 6'2", 200 pounds. You know,
right.
He's a pretty big dude as well. So, Karson, great first edition of Carson's Corner. Before I let you go, plug yourself, man. Where can people follow you? Twitter, Instagram, all that great stuff.
Yeah, so my Twitter is KRSON HOBBS Carson Hobbs. Instagram is KRSON HOBBS1. Those are my two links that I'm usually most on. Go ahead and drop me a follow and go Irish.
Irish fans, go take a listen, go take a watch. Again, Twitter, he's very active, continuing to recruit all these great. And I love that hat. He needs to send me one of those hats, but we'll talk about that off air. First edition of Carson's Corner here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. There you have it, Mr. Carson Hobbs, 2024 cornerback commit to the University of Notre Dame in the first edition of what we're calling Carson's Corner. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Just kind of brief you all for if you missed a part of that interview. Got to hit on a lot of, and you should go back and listen to the interview if you did miss any portions of it. Talked a lot about the recent commitments to Notre Dame's class, his role as a recruiter, his past visit for the Blue and Gold game a couple of weekends ago. Really, I think he's just going to be a great spokesperson for Notre Dame football moving forward. So really enjoyed having Karson on, and we're going to try to make this a weekly segment here at Irish Breakdown called Carson's Corner. And with that, Brian Driscoll's joining me, the publisher here at irishbreakdown.com. I told y'all, man, you weren't just going to get a solo show for me today. We got to get some more of the Irish Breakdown family on. And I know Brian also enjoyed that interview with Karson, man. He's a great kid, Brian. I really enjoy that young man, dude. He exemplifies Notre Dame football, in my opinion.
He is, and you can see why, Ryan. You know, my evaluation of him isn't as high as I wished it would have been, but he's one of those guys where you're like, I really, really, really hope that kid makes me look stupid in a couple of years, because he's such a very personable kid. It was kind of funny, like when he shows up to that January junior day, right? And he shows up in a Mercedes and he just gets out with like this jumpsuit on. And I'm like, this kid's got a lot of swag, man. This kid's got a lot of personality. And he's, you know, you look for certain types in a DB room, right? And he's got a lot of that stuff, a lot of that confidence. It's not arrogance. It's not cockiness. It's just kid's got a ton of personality and a lot of confidence in himself. And it's really cool to see just how much he's embraced what makes Notre Dame unique, you know, and just embraced being a representative of Notre Dame. He's not even here yet, and he already understands how important it is for him to be an ambassador of the program and the class, which is pretty cool. And he's a really awesome kid. He really is.
He is, man. I'm looking forward to obviously continuing to build that relationship, getting him back on some more segments of really really love also the recruit's perspective on the recruiting process and just stuff that's working behind the scenes. So make sure to go give Karson Hobbs a follow on Twitter, Notre Dame fans. Again, it's capital K, capital H, Karson Hobbs on Twitter and on Instagram. And I hope you all enjoyed Carson's Corner. You should go give a nice review on your favorite podcast platform. Say how much Carson's Corner is such a great addition to the Irish Breakdown family, and make sure it's a 5-star review. Hit that like button as well, because we're about to hit over to a little bit of a offer breakdown.
Yeah, it's actually one of many things we got new going on at Irish Breakdown right now, Ryan. Before we move over, obviously we have this on the show, but on the message board, a reason that you need to sign up for the message boards is we're going to start doing more film breakdowns on the message board. All 22 film breakdowns. I have 2 up right now about Sam Hartman and the deep ball cut ups. We'll take a screenshot. I'll show the routes. I'll talk you through it. Then I'll show the video, explain what you're seeing. We're going to do a bunch of that stuff moving forward. We were thinking about doing it on the show, but we really felt like we needed to do more things that were only for the folks that are on the message board, the folks that are paying to be premium members. So you're definitely going to want to check that out too, Ryan. So lots of new stuff. And it's just the beginning. Ryan and I have spent time talking about different things we want to do, different directions we want to go with the show, with the website, with the message board. So this summer's going to be a lot of fun as we start to add a lot more of this stuff to the mix. No doubt. Yeah.
So like Brian said, go to boards@irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you sign up. It is very inexpensive, especially for the content that we feel like we put on there and the great intel that we put on there. You can also, of course, go over to irishbreakdown.com for some of our free content as well. Daily recruiting insight, team insights, as much information as possible. Sorry, I'm reading a message from Brian Driscoll as I speak, and I'm bad at multitasking. You're on mute as well, so you can't yell at me right now.
I know you're only 30, but you don't have to respond to a text the second it comes in. You can always kind of wait for the break and then look at it, which will help us transition over. So yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
Well, man. I am very bad with multitasking at times. I used to be better, I promise. But as soon as I hit 30, it was like downhill from there. So
I blame it on Jules. I think it's totally Jules' fault.
You can. Hey, man. I blame the gray hairs on her, so you can blame whatever you want on her. There's no doubt. So we're going to get over, for people that didn't follow, you should go over. I had a nice recruiting rundown that came out earlier this morning. Talked a lot about 2024 recruiting and recruiting in general, because there were 9 scholarship offers that were handed out this past week for the 2024, 2025, and 2026 class. We want to hit on a couple of the 2024 kids to know that were offered this past week. And before we get over to the new offers, though, like button, subscribe to the podcast, notification bell. IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 6:00 Eastern time. So you should make sure that you hit that notification bell so you get that awesome notification that the show is about to go live. But with that, we're going to move over to the offer on this Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. Brian, so like I said, there was 9 new scholarship offers that were extended, 2024, 2025, and 2026. We really wanted to talk about 2024 because I think that there were a couple extremely interesting offers with a lot of context that we can hit on here, and including one player who we're going to start out with that is actually on campus yesterday and was still on campus today. We're expecting him to be there until about 4:00 Eastern time. That is Teddy Rizak, who is a linebacker out of Westside High School in the state of Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska to be exact. Listed 6'4", 190 pounds. Again, 2024 linebacker. If you watch his film, plays safety, plays linebacker, plays wide receiver. He does a little bit of everything for Westside. So, Brian, this one's a very interesting one because this has all happened very quickly. It was offered. Al Golden was out there on Thursday to see Teddy. Then on Saturday, they offered him officially, and he put it out, obviously, in the universe publicly. And then on Sunday, he's going to visit the University of Notre Dame. So this is clearly a player to get very familiar with if you're a Notre Dame fan.
Well, I mean, look, you don't have to be like a rocket scientist to figure out that this one is moving kind of quickly. It's an interesting story, Ryan, and we're going to talk a little bit about the offer and what we think of it and just kind of where it's coming from. And this is a very hotly debated offer, right? I mean, there's a lot of fans who aren't fired up about it, some for good reason, some just because they do nothing but look at offer lists and stars, which is fine, but I don't pay much attention to those. But there are some people that look at the film and say, I'm not sure. And that's fair. That's very fair. It's an interesting one because we're going to talk about what we think about the offer and about Teddy as a player. But I think the thing that people need to understand about this, Ryan, or not, I don't think I know. The thing that what people need to understand about this one is this is not a reaction to something. This is not I've heard people say it's a panic offer. It's a lazy offer. It's none of those things. You may not like it, and we're going to find out if it's good, if it's a good offer down the road. And this isn't necessarily to defend the offer. This is simply to say this offer came from work. And what you have to understand a little bit about the backstory of this offer is they have been aware of Teddy for a while because they offered several months ago, 2 months ago now, right? They offered his high school teammate in the 2025 class, Christian Jones, who's a
stud, by the way.
Really good in middle linebacker. I see him as a Mike, Ryan. Do you see him as a Mike?
Agree.
6'3", 215, thumper, can run, really good football player.
Yep.
And so they've known about Teddy for a while. And it was one of those things where as they kept breaking down Christian, this kid kept popping. And so you look at the film and you're like, okay, I don't understand. It's this kid's athletic, this kid's tall. What's there to learn about the offer list, right?
Yep.
So Notre Dame continues to do their due diligence. Al Golden goes out there to the high school. He does background on the kid. He looks at the grades, all that kind of stuff to see, like, is there a reason why this kid is not getting offers? And then, you get kind of, you talk to the coaches and you get more feedback on his actual size and those type of things. Cause I don't believe you're able to actually meet the kids now. I think this is still one of those times where you can go to the schools, but you can't like talk to kids or anything like that. So you talk to people
you can see them from a distance, but you can't talk to them.
Yeah. And you can't do like the bump thing, right? All that kind of stuff. But you talk to people that you trust and you say, okay, what's this kid's size really? And Notre Dame got some verified sizes on him. I think he's well over 6'3", 33-inch arms, which is pretty long for a linebacker. And now he claims to run a 4.48. What I have been told by sources is they have a verified 4.52 on him,
which is great.
So he can run. I mean, he can really run. And so you look at it and say, but why does he only have offers from Boston College? And now
Boston
Notre
College,
Dame,
and then the military schools, and
that's the interesting thing that I don't understand, because look, you could debate if you see a Notre Dame caliber kid, but it's odd that like he doesn't have Pac-12 schools coming after him. So I don't really know what the deal is. It's one of those weird ones. And the other thing is, you can say, well, maybe he's just not being looked at as someone who all these different things you look at, and then you say, but he goes to one of the best high schools in the state of Nebraska. I mean, a well-recruited high school. It's not like, with a heavily coveted 2025 linebacker I don't really know what to make of it, Ryan. I don't have any justification for it, any explanation for it. I don't get it. Yeah. But all I can assure you, and we can debate, is this a good offer or not? And there's a lot of fair opinions that people can have on this one, because Ryan and I are a little bit torn on it, both of us, not torn with each other, just both a little torn on it.
Yeah.
But all I can say is like it or not, whether it works out or not, this is an offer that came from work, right? And an evaluation. Now, it may end up being an incorrect evaluation. It may end up being a great evaluation. You're like, wow, what a great, so good that you guys got on this kid early. We've talked about Brandon Hillman being a guy like that the staff got on before everybody else. There's been several kids like that Notre Dame's been able to get on really before they blew up. Remember last year they got on Ben Minich when he had a very unimpressive offer list, and then he kind of blew up. They got on a Don Schuler before he had a really impressive offer list, and then and Georgia comes, and Ohio State comes, and Bama comes, and all those teams offered later. So, it's an interesting one, but it's one that they feel that they've done the evaluation. And so I try to do some digging on this and find out, is this because you faded with Chris Cole? Is it because you faded with Kingston Viliama Asa? Is it because you faded with Bodie Cahoon and Brian Huff? And what I'm told is it has nothing to do with any of that. They just really like this kid. And once they were able to get out there and just kind of talk to people at the school and really do their background on the kid, they're just like, boy, we know that this is gonna, and they know how this offer is going to be perceived. Trust me, they're very well aware. I don't care. They're just like, the film is what it is, and we can't ignore that, right? And so that's the background on where this offer came from, Ryan. That I felt it was important to add some context to this one.
Yeah.
And and honestly, I think what it does is it gives them a little bit more breathing room in regard to how this is going to fill out. Now, I mean, how this class is going to fill out, right? And so now it's like, okay, you needed to try to get 3 of the dudes that you were recruiting, and there was like, what, 4 on the board? So
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, this gives you a little bit of a breathing room, a little bit more breathing room to where now you only really got to get 2 of them to get to your numbers, and then you're taking a flyer on a kid like this. That's basically what this is, Ryan, is you're taking a flyer on a kid that not a lot of other people are on and hoping that it works out. And we'll find out if it does or doesn't. Ryan and I will dive into the film a little bit and give our personal opinions on it. But it's an intriguing offer for sure. But I just wanted people to understand that they did their due diligence on this one. I don't know how I feel about it, but let's just dive into it, Ryan. Here's how I felt about it. I watched the kid's film. I see a kid that can really run. I would have some, like, if I was a Notre Dame coach, I'd want to see the kid in person. Right. And that's partly why they brought him on campus this week, is they want to be able to size him up. Like, okay, is he really 6'4"? Is he really 190? What's his frame like? And then that's going to have a big impact on whether or not they push for a commitment for him. They want to see, get Matt Bayless, get eyes on him, measure him, and all that other kind of stuff. And that's going to really tell us a lot about how the Notre Dame staff feels. That's why they wanted to get him on campus so quickly, so they could kind of measure him up. But my first thought was there's 2 ways to look at this, and I'm not quite sure how to look at it. Number one is, well, this is a kid you could take much later down the road is kind of my first thought, right? But then the other thought is, but if you're sold on the kid, do you really want to wait until everybody else and their mother now is involved with them before you make your push? I think that's the back and forth that this staff had to do with themselves is, if the kid meets everything that we look for, do we want to take them now, or do we want to wait till everybody else gets involved? And I think what the staff is going to decide this week, based on how the visit goes, he was on campus, yesterday into today, correct, Ryan?
Yep, yesterday, and then he is going to be here until about 4:00 Eastern time today is the plan. Yep.
So it's kind of like, well, let's size him up. Let's see. Let's put him through the same ringer that we've put all these other linebackers and see how he stacks up physically. Because the film for them pops, and I like the film quite a bit as well. I have questions. The film is impressive to me as a football player, right? Just looking at a high school football player. The question I have is, does that translate to a place like Notre Dame? That's my question. Does the size translate? Does he have the frame to get up to 215, 220, 225, which is they're recruiting him as a rover, just for the record. That's the position they see him at. Does that translate? Can he add 20 pounds and still be a 4.52, right? I mean, does he have the power to me to kind of take that physicality step? Those are all questions that I have about how his great game translates, Ryan. But the one thing that you see on film, and we'll pop it up here in a second, is he can run. I mean, that's not debatable. There's a lot of things about this young man that are debatable, that are worth having a discussion, but speed is not one of them, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's got some range to him. He's got a little bit of length to him, obviously. Like, it doesn't take a good eye to see that he's a pretty tall kid, right? And he's got some length to him and covers a decent amount of ground. So there are definitely some things to like about Teddy. And I know we're on the same page on this one for the most part, right? It's just projection. Like, there's a lot of projection that needs to happen to this one. You know, like, there's just a lot. He's a skinny kid right now. What is he going to be able to carry on his frame? Because there are some athletic gifts to work with, right? It's just about the next step, right? The next step. How much weight can you put on this frame? Is he a will eventually if he's able to gain enough weight? Like, there's just that's just there's a little bit of unknown with this kid, in my opinion. That's all.
Yeah. I think so. Like you mentioned, Ryan, let's kind of, as we work through the film here, a couple things that we notice on film that stands out. Number one, like you said, he is long and he is fast, but he is skinny, right? And that's the kind of a question that I have. You'll see from film, he plays all over the place, and plays like this, you really see a smooth athlete that can run. He's not afraid to hit people. It's just, I don't see. Here's the thing. I see a kid that looks more like a Kennedy Urlacher hit-wise as opposed to a linebacker, right? And Kennedy is a very willing tackler, but he doesn't just destroy people when he hits them like Zeke Mata did, right? And that's the same thing with Teddy, is he doesn't crush people when he hits them, right? And like Nolan Ziegler did when he was a junior. When Nolan would hit people in space, they'd go down. But you also see from the film here that he's pretty fast. You know, this, I think, is this the play where this is the play where you see him pursuing backside, and you're like, boy, that kid's got some closing speed, Ryan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then I look at it. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and again, like working in space, there's a lot of really cool things because I mean, it's a testament to him. I know it's again, it makes it a muddled projection sometimes when a guy plays so many different spots. But I mean, they're asking him to play mid-hole safety, they're asking him to play rover, they're asking him to play inside the box at times, they're asking him to play wide receiver. Here he is on the edge, having to basically work through a speed option.
Really smart play.
Yeah. Kind of slow play at the speed option and lays out the quarterback, forces kind of a late pitch. I mean, there's a lot to like here, man. There's a lot. It's just, yeah.
Because here's the thing I see. I see a lot of linebacker skill in him, but I see a kid that's instinctive, a kid that's fundamentally sound. He's a willing hitter. We got to see if he can fill out. I see the kid that can really run. I mean, that's an instinctive play there. He, reads the quarterback's eyes. He gets his hands up, bats it down. You see a kid on offense that shows look at that first step off the line. That's impressive. I mean, if we're talking about a wide receiver, what's one thing we talk about at receiver? We like kids that don't have a lot of wasted motion off the snap and guys that drive off that lead foot. This is as good of a stance and start as I've seen evaluating receivers in this class, Ryan.
Yep.
Right. As far as just
nice little rocker step outside to set him up for the post.
Yeah. Too, and he sticks it. You see the acceleration coming out of the break. The point being, like, this is a kid that knows how to play football, right? This is a kid that's a football player. I see a kid that can run. I see a kid that's instinctive. The problem that I have is I also see a kid that looks like a safety, body type wise. And that's what I think Notre Dame is trying to figure out right now. Because a couple things. Number one is when we saw Bryce Young as a junior in high school, we saw a kid that was about 215 pounds. Yes. When I saw Bryce Young as a just couple months later in January, he was up to 240. When we saw Bryce Young in April, 3 months after that, he was up to 250. Kids grow and develop. And that's the thing that I wonder if is happening with Notre Dame is they've kind of gotten out and now they've seen him, got him on campus. If they're like, this kid's maybe he has filled out. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's going to determine whether or not Notre Dame makes a really hard push for this. This is a nice play too. You see some athleticism here, some good balance here. He's not a thumper. Here he is playing in the back end. Really nice, clean footwork, good plant and drive, good reroute, really good closing speed on the receiver there.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing not only obviously how the visit went today, and we'll have more of that at boards@irishbreakdown.com later, but I also am looking forward to hearing what he weighed in at, how that weight has been developing this offseason. I think that's a big indicator to your point, Brian, because we have to remember this is a high school junior. He's still got a whole senior year to play, man. Another year of development before he would even come to South Bend if he ultimately does choose Notre Dame. So, there's a lot of time here.
It's a really clean speed out cut right here, Ryan. All right, like I said, the kid knows what he's doing. Gets back downhill. Like, look, he rounds it off, but watch him. Watch where he makes his cut, and then watch where he ends up catching a ball. Right, that's a really nice out cut right there. You got to round it off because it's a speed cut, not a plant. But then you work back downhill. It's really fluid. I mean, look, the kid can run. There's some things on there I like, Ryan, and there's some things on there that just say, boy, I don't know, man. Is this really a guy that's going to get you to the next level as an athlete? Yeah, he is. Is this a guy that's going to get you to the next level as a instinctive player? Yeah, he is. Is this a guy that has the physicality and force and frame to be able to hold up against the Georgias, the Bamas, that I don't know. Right. That's really what it comes down to, is that right there. Yep. Right. Because look, I've said this before. I've recruited kids to the 1AA level that athletically, I've said this before. My receivers I had at Christopher Newport, they would go work out with like UVA's DBs during the summer, and they would put work in on them because athletically, they could compete. Where they couldn't compete is when you put the pads on and it came down to strength and physicality and things like that. Right. They just weren't big enough or strong enough to play at that level. But that's my question with this kid is, I mean, this is a nice route. This is an athletic kid. Now his brother's the quarterback here too. So, I mean, they are so on the same page. It's not even funny. You know what I mean? And you can tell they're related with that.
That's like when Peyton Manning was a sophomore in high school. Cooper was a senior that year, and they said that Peyton completed 120 passes, Brian, and 80 of them were to Cooper Manning that year. So that's what we got going on.
Yeah, you see a lot of that for sure. I do love the fact this is a nice play too. This redirect shows he's a pretty good lateral athlete too, Ryan. Yeah. Good balance, redirect, closes quickly. Athletically, I don't really have a lot of question marks, Ryan. I really don't. I mean, he's one of the best athletes they have. I think the only linebacker that I would say shows more range that's on the board now than this kid is Chris Cole. That's it. Yeah. I mean, but the difference is Chris Cole looks about an inch taller and longer and has a frame that projects a lot more. And that's really the difference. And a buddy of mine asked me, he goes, well, hey, if you take this kid, do you have to stop recruiting Chris Cole? And I was like, no, I don't think so, because we've always felt that Chris Cole is a rover now, but is a guy that could grow into a will. Yeah. Where this kid is, to me, more of a true rover as of right now, depending on what we see from the frame. But there's a lot of talent here, Ryan, athletically. Well, and you guys can see it in the film.
I think that's a great point, though, Brian, is that I think that one thing that I'm really curious about, and it would change my opinion on this offer a lot, is dependent upon who the other linebackers in the class end up being, right? So, because if you get Kingston, Villian-Moasa, Chris Cole, and then this kid, I'm good, man. I'm good. I can take that. I'd be okay with that, right? It's just, I'm just curious if they do end up with Teddy in the class, if they stop recruiting somebody else, and like what the board.
No, I was told no. Like. I was told no. I was told that this is what I was told, Ryan, and I actually was doing this digging before while you guys were doing your other stuff. I was trying to do some more digging on this, and I was told this is not in reaction to them like losing ground with somebody else, or that they're gonna drop anyone. Now, obviously, there's one less spot for all the guys they're recruiting. Correct?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
But there's nobody else that they view as a pure rover. And that's how they view this kid as a pure rover. Right. And Chris Cole, they view as a rover, but very much in the Jaden Alsbury, Jalen Sneed role of rover early that then grows into a will.
Right. Because Chris Cole is going to be 225, 230
early in his career, right? And you had a chance to see him at the Blue Gold game, correct? Wasn't he one of the kids that you had? He's got a really nice frame.
Yeah, he's got to be at least 210, 215 right now. So he's going to outgrow pretty quick.
To keep him at rover size, 215, 220, you'd have to keep him from gaining weight in the weight program at Notre Dame. And so I think eventually he becomes more of an inside guy as well. So I think what this does, Ryan, is I think this obviously means there's going to be less room. Yeah. What if he commits now, right? And I mean, we feel that Notre Dame is in a pretty great spot here. I mean, the kid told you Notre Dame was his dream offer.
Yes.
I mean,
sort of a dream offer. It's obviously his biggest offer right now as well, right? And again, let's read the tea leaves here, guys, right? I mean, he gets offered on Saturday and he's on a visit on Sunday. We can use common sense on this one, right? We can use a little bit of common sense.
And let me just tell you that it's not cheap to fly out of Nebraska to South Bend when you have about a 48-hour heads up or notice at best. Yes. Right? I mean, at best. So I mean, there's obviously some thought here of kind of how they see it. He does have a brother at Air Force, so who is sort of a linebacker safety type, right? He's 6'1", 190. I believe he's a walk-on. I could be wrong on that, Ryan. I'm not 100% certain about that. I think he's a walk-on, but I could be completely wrong on that. So don't hold me to that. I'm actually going to look that up here real quick. But see if he was a guy that signed. Yeah, it looks like he was a walk-on. Yeah. Gotcha. So anyway, that's a little bit about Dominic Rizak. I mean, that's his brother's Dominic Rizak, Teddy Rizak. Yep. It's an intriguing offer, Ryan, and I'm back and forth on it, to be completely honest with you. At times, like there's at times where you and I are talking and you're like, and I'm like, yeah, I see this. And then we'll talk 10 minutes later and you're like, I really like this. I'm like, yeah, but I have questions about this. Yes. Here's what it is at the end of the day. It's a risky offer. It's an offer that you're either going to say in 3 or 4 years, you're going to say one of two things. Wow, what a great find. What a great find. or B, you're going to say, what the heck were you thinking? Did you not read the tea leaves? Like he didn't have any kind of offer list, or it's going to be a guy that you're like, man, this staff knows how to find some gems, right? Like I remember when Clemson took Isaiah Simmons. Now look, Isaiah Simmons ended up having he had offers from Michigan and Minnesota, Nebraska. But early on, when Clemson got on him, he did not have that, that great offer list, but he was this kid, 3-star kid from out in Nebraska or Kansas that nobody really heard of. Yeah. I don't see that in this kid. But my point is I remember when Notre Dame, Mike Elko first got on Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa. Notre Dame fans like, who's that guy? We're beating Virginia and Michigan State and Wake Forest for kids now? Really? It turned out pretty well.
Wasn't Drew Tranquil was committed to Purdue as a 3-star as well at the time, right? So, I mean, it happens. I will say this, Teddy, I almost called him Dominic now. That's all because of
it's
you,
my
by
bad.
the way.
It's his older brother. That's my bad. It's my bad. Sorry, Teddy. Sorry, Rizak family.
Teddy Rizak did also get an offer from Missouri yesterday, which obviously is an SEC school. So I'm sure that there will be some more offers.
Look, now that Notre Dame's offered, if he doesn't commit in the next 24 to 48 hours, you're going to see him get 6-7 offers the next week. That's just how it goes.
Easy. Yeah.
So it was funny. So little backstory. When Notre Dame started going after Brandon Hillman, he didn't have much of an offer list. So there were some people that kind of leaked that Notre Dame liked the kid. And within a week, Tennessee, Virginia Tech, like a dozen schools offered him. And then, and that's just kind of how it goes, because it's like, about the kid, but you're like, well, I don't need to offer him right now. Cause and then all of a sudden Notre Dame offers or somebody offers and it starts to run. That happens all the time with kids like this. Now that won't happen if he commits early, if that does in fact happen. But yeah, if he doesn't commit right away, you'll see some schools get it. And you may see some schools still try to get involved.
Yeah, always happens.
And try to say, they're going to over recruit you and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And you'll still see some of that stuff.
I mean, we saw Don Scholler get an offer from Georgia while he's committed to Notre Dame for like a year at that point, right? Like it happens. Yeah. It happens.
Ohio State offered after he committed, of course. Yeah. I remember Cooper Flanagan got an offer from Alabama, and after he'd committed Notre Dame, oh God, I don't know, man, I don't know. He might go to Alabama. I'm like, all right, calm down, folks.
And Owen Wafel had an Oklahoma offer soon after he had committed to Notre Dame.
And then when he visited, people lost their minds. It was just like,
even though he's with his best friend that goes there now. So yeah, it's always how it happens, man.
Yeah,
but. So that's Teddy Rizak. Again, he's on campus yesterday on Sunday. He's on campus today. We'll have an update at boards.irishbreakdown.com and on the site at some point, most likely tonight. So make sure to stay locked in there. Brian, it was not the only impressive 2024 player to get offered this past week, though. So I wanted to hit on a couple of these guys. I want to start with Xavier Robinson, who is a running back out of Carl Albert, High School in the state of Oklahoma. We hit on him a little bit last week because he got offered earlier in the week, but he's 6'2", 225-pound running back. Had something like 40-something total touchdowns last year as a junior, nearly 3,000 yards rushing. Big hoss of a running back. And I know some people were asking, you have a couple official visitors of running backs coming up pretty soon in June. You got Kedron Young coming. You got Anthony Carey coming. Things not going well? Like things can't be going well, right? That's why you're offering Xavier Robinson. They must be hurting, but it turns out they just offered a really good football player, in my opinion.
Well, I think that it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. I think part of that reaction by fans is because they've been following Notre Dame recruiting for the last 20 years. In fairness, Ryan, because what would happen is Notre Dame would put all their eggs in a small basket and they wouldn't start offering kids until they felt they were losing those kids, right? And which is fair. But what this staff has done is they're like, hey, look, you aren't committed. And that's why they have this new silent commitment policy where basically you can silently commit all you want. And sure, we'll take it, but we're not going to stop recruiting your position until you go public and stop taking visits. They learned their lesson last year. And so basically until a kid shuts his recruitment down, we're going to keep recruiting that position. And so you like where you are with Anthony Carey and especially Kedron Young, but it's not a given you're going to get either one of those kids and they need a second back. So do you not offer this kid now and then let him go commit to Oklahoma? Or do you try to say, hey, let's throw our hat in the ring and hopefully we can convince this kid to slow his recruitment down? And what happened about 2 days after he got offered by Notre Dame?
Slowed it down.
He said, hey, I'm going to now take, because the report was what we had been told by some of the people that we talked to is that he was about to commit to Oklahoma here very soon.
Yes.
No, Dylan McCullough goes out to the high school, lets the staff there know, lets everybody know, hey, we really are interested in this kid. We have genuine interest in this kid. They did their homework on the academic side of things, the person, because what they'll do on these visits, Ryan, they don't just go sit and say, hey, talk to the coach and we love this kid. They'll talk to teachers. They'll talk to guidance counselors. They'll talk to, like, I remember I had one guy's like, we'll talk to the lunch lady. We'll talk to people, the janitor, to find out, like, does this kid treat people with respect? That there's no other reason that he should other than just he's that kind of kid, right? And that's what a lot of these visits are about. It's I can't meet with the kid, but we're going to talk to people to try to find out what kind of young man are we going to recruit into our program, And so everything went great with the evaluation of Xavier in that regard. And then Notre Dame offers him. And next thing you know, he's like, you know what, I'm going to slow my recruitment down. Yep. He announces he's going to take official visits to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Now, he hasn't announced he's going to take an official visit to Notre Dame yet. Nope. Notre Dame's still fighting for that. But I think this offer kind of helped him realize, like, hey, I want to make sure I do my due diligence. And I think that helped Notre Dame get in the mix. But it's what they're doing, Ryan, is that's this staff, in my opinion, recruiting how you're supposed to recruit. Until a kid commits and ends his recruitment, then you've got to keep recruiting. And even if you feel good about where you stand. And that's because, like, look, if you look at it, like, Notre Dame, when they first offered Isaiah Canyon, was in a pretty good spot with several receivers.
They were.
And they just kept scouring. And then they came across this Isaiah Canyon kid, and they're like, holy moly, this is a dude. Had they stopped recruiting receivers and just settled on the guys they were already good a place with, then they don't offer him. And when I did my upside grades for the offensive class, I have Isaiah Canyon third on the current grade. I have CJ Carr 1, Cam Williams 2, and Isaiah Canyon 3, all top 100 kids. But Isaiah Canyon's number 1 on my upside grade, Ryan. I mean, and I've talked to people whose opinions I respect on football and respect on evaluating this position, and they've said no, 100%. Like, that kid's ceiling is enormous, and that's why Georgia's trying to push for him now, and that's why Florida State pushed for him now. And Notre Dame's going to have to fight, to hold on to them just like they do all their commitments. But that's what you do. You keep recruiting. And I think that's what this staff is doing. And I love it, but I think it's taking some getting used to from Notre Dame fans, because that's not the normal, operating procedure from the way it's been for a long time, where they put small group of kids are actually recruiting, and then they wouldn't start offering new guys until they realized they weren't going to get another guy.
Yep.
But it also, Ryan, as you mentioned, I love the point you made. It doesn't take very long watching the film to realize, like, oh, this is a kid that you're like, okay, I get it. Yes. I get why they offered this kid. So let's put this sucker up, because I do think they want a bigger back in this class to go with Aeneas Williams. They want a guy that brings some size. Anthony Carey's not a huge back, but he runs with really good authority. Yep. And of course, Keidron Young's a monster. I love Keidron Young, but this kid's a good football player, a really good football player.
And again, if you are joining us a little late, we're talking about Xavier Robinson, who is a running back out of Carl Alberts High School in the state of Oklahoma that was offered by Notre Dame early last week. I mean, yeah, Brian, like, the things that popped to me is long speed is not tremendous, but I really think that he has good stop-start, though, man. Like, he gets to his top speed really well, in my opinion, and he is physical, man.
He's got really good balance, too.
Yes. And he's 6'2", 225 pounds, so he's more in that. I mean, he's a little taller than what Audric Estime is, but he's in that mold as far as a power back. I mean, you see him just creating big play after big play, and I don't think he plays against the best competition in Oklahoma, but when you don't play against the best competition, what do you need to do? Dominate it. How do you dominate?
You know who else played bad competition
touchdowns
in high school? You know who else played bad competition in high school? Derrick Henry.
Yes.
And you know what he did to it? He dominated it. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is you should rush for 3,000 some yards when you play against bad competition in high school, right? And that's what he's doing. And I think, to your point right now, the speed thing that's my one question. I think he's got really nice feet. He's nimble. He is a pure power back, though, right? And he doesn't have the explosiveness that Keidron Young brings to the table, but he's a very nimble back. This is the kind of kid. So why do you recruit a back like this, Ryan? Well, you're a team that wants to be a very perimeter-oriented passing team. You want to be able to run more RPOs. You want to be able to stretch the ball down the field. So what's one way to really condense the defense and allow yourselves to put defenses into a bind? You either have to, put more guys in the box to stop this big old monster up the middle, or a Keidron Young he's probably 215, 220 and explosive, right? Anthony Carey's built very much like a a more muscular version of Logan Diggs, in my opinion. Those are all bigger backs that you have to bring your hard hat when you're going to face those guys on, especially when they get to college.
Yep.
And then that forces them to put in more numbers, which then allows you to stretch the field with the pass game more. And that's what a kid like this brings to the table. And, you see it here, right, Ryan? I mean, he runs through contact with ease. I mean, it's hard to bring down. He's got great contact balance. I mean, you just see it. This is a play right here. Like, look, this play doesn't happen against the talent Notre Dame will play, right? Like, this is one of those ones you're like, yeah, this doesn't project, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what do I like here? He never stops moving his feet, ever. Like, ever. And that there are plays where that will help him on the next level. That will translate and help him at the next level. And so those are all traits that you look for and say, boy, this kid brings something to the table. He really does.
And it's about also matching up what you already have in the class. 2024, you have Aeneas Williams out of Missouri, Hannibal, Missouri, who is more of that all-purpose type back. He's right around 200 pounds, but we know that he is a kid that catches the football well, can run a little bit outside, can run a little bit inside. He's got kind of that all-around skill set. I mean, he's literally rated as the top all-purpose back in 2024 by Rivals. But now you're trying to find a back that complements that skill set. And I think that that's what Xavier Robinson could bring to the game. I think that's what Keydron Young could bring to the game. I think that's what Anthony Carey could even bring to the game. A bigger, more powerful back to go with the all-around skill set that Aeneas Williams has. Like, I could see 2-3 years from now, if they get a Xavier Robinson or a Keydron Young, let's just say in this hypothetical, that's your 1-2 punch, man. You got the power, and then you got a little bit of the finesse and a little bit more of the all-purpose action with an Aeneas Williams as your main two backs. Like, that's kind of what you're pushing for in this class, is the size aspect. Because now that Logan Diggs is no longer on the running back depth chart as well, Brian, Audric Estime is going to be the guy. And if he has a big year, I doubt you see him in 2024, most likely.
Well, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're hoping. I mean, to me, and I know that some are going to disagree with me on this, Ryan, but if you're a Notre Dame fan, you should be hoping that Audric Estime goes pro after this year. Because if he doesn't, it means he didn't play well, or he got hurt, or the team was terrible. I mean, so to me, I hope he goes pro, because if he goes pro, it means he had a great year and the team was pretty good. That's what it means, and that's where you really want to be. Can I give you some fun numbers, Ryan, just to kind of compare? Because I think that
stats. Is it his stats?
Yeah, I want to give his stats, just because I do think it's important to kind of point out, like, look, he doesn't play against great competition, but you want a guy that like you said, dominates that level of competition. So let me give you some numbers here. So
sure,
he, as a junior, last season rushed for 2,594 yards, averaged 9.4 yards per carry, and had 39 touchdowns. As a junior in high school, Derrick Henry at Yulee High School, who also played a very similarly not very good schedule, rushed for 2,610 yards, 8.5 yards per carry, and had 34 rushing touchdowns.
Yep.
So now here's why I wanted to bring that up. It's fun to compare that, right? But let me tell you what Derrick Henry's senior year stats were.
Dude, his career numbers are just dumb. He runs like 10,000 yards, right? Or something like that.
So his junior year, his 2,600 yards was his third straight 2,000-yard season. Okay, because he rushed for 2,465 as a freshman, 2,788 as a sophomore, 2,610 as a junior. Here's what Derrick Henry did as a senior. 4,261 yards. He carried the ball 462 times, averaged 9.2 yards per carry, and averaged 327.8 yards per game, and had 55 rushing touchdowns. He ended his career with 12,124 yards, averaged 8.7 yards per carry on almost 1,400 carries, and had 153 touchdowns. Just running. It's just running. It's just come on.
The coaching staff that ran it 460 times, man, that's malpractice, man. You're trying to hurt that kid at that point. 460 times.
If you would have seen the competition he was going up against in high school, you would not have felt that way.
Oh man,
he was always the biggest guy on the field. There, I mean, trust me, Ryan. I've seen the senior highlight film. He wasn't taking a lot of heavy contact. I'm just telling you right now. He was delivering that contact, but he was a special. And here's the other thing: in 1,397 carries, you know how many times Derrick Henry put the ball on the ground in 1,397 career carries?
Twice.
5 times. 5
Okay.
times in
Still-
4
still
years.
crazy.
In
Yeah.
4 years, right?
Yeah.
On almost 1,400 carries. He did that. And he also had 2 passing touchdowns in high school. He had more passing touchdowns than he had receiving touchdowns.
That's
he only
wild,
caught 8
man.
passes his whole career.
Because I mean, he has looked like he does now pretty much his entire high school career as well. I remember seeing him as a senior. I'm like, he looks like a linebacker in the NFL right now. Like he's massive, dude. Like he's absolutely awesome. Just
Derrick Henry returned 1 kick in high school. 1
80-yard touchdown.
96.
96. Okay, great.
96. Anyway, but I did want to show that comparison that, like, look, you when a guy plays that, we're not saying this kid is Derrick Henry. He's not.
No.
Derrick Henry was a freak.
Yes.
And Derrick Henry was fast, right? I mean, that's the other thing too. Is Derrick Henry?
Yeah, he went to the combine and ran like a 4.52 at 247 pounds. Like,
The point is, what you want to see a guy when he plays against not great competition absolutely obliterate it, and that's what Xavier Robinson does. And that's the important thing. That's the thing that you want to see from a kid like that a school like Notre Dame is offering. You want to see absolute domination as a player.
Yes, that's exactly what you get. I'm pretty sure he only had 1 kick return this year as well, Brian. It was for like 60-something yards. It wasn't quite 96, but like still, you know, it's still pretty good stuff, man. Yeah. So that's Xavier Robinson again, running back out of Carl Albert High School in the state of Oklahoma that was offered by Notre Dame last week. Last 2024 kid that we wanted to hit on that was offered this past week by Notre Dame was Anthony Robinson III, who is a safety out of the state of Louisiana, listed 6'1", 190 pounds. This one's a very interesting one to me, Brian, because I think that a fit conversation needs to happen here as far as how he would potentially fit with a couple other safeties that are on the board potentially for Notre Dame. But I'll be very honest, man. I loved his film. I did. And I'm looking forward to breaking it down a little bit because this kid, it's funny that he plays in Louisiana because the person I kept thinking of when I was watching him was like, that guy looks like he's Jamal Adams as far as like how he's utilized, you know, like he's utilized as a short zone guy a ton, a little bit of man coverage, but he's a second level dude that is there to make tackles. But then he can also do stuff like this where you're like, oh, there might be a little more speed there than I originally anticipated. Like, a lot of sites that like, man, and he was on a 14-0 Distrahan team this past year.
If that name sounds familiar to you fans, that's the home of Michael Young as well. So Notre Dame has recruited this high school before successfully. And
it's a good school, and they play against good competition, and he was very good, man. Very good player for this team. I mean, you're going to see him. He plays almost like a rover in this defense.
See, that's my thing, Ryan. When I see him play and I see him run, he strikes me as more of a rover. Yeah. Now, when I say rover, I view him a little differently than I do a Chris Cole or even a Teddy Rizak to a degree. Yeah. But to me, he strikes me as a guy that I don't know if I love the safety fit of him in this defense. I do really like the idea of him being a second level player because, as you see, he's got really good second level range. He can run. He's a very good tackler. He's very instinctive. You can tell this kid is a smart football player from this film, Ryan. Yep. But I also kind of feel like he runs more like a rover than he does a pure safety. And that's my thing. When we talk about the fit, Ryan, is I kind of say if you view him as a safety, him and Kennedy Urlacher play the game very similarly. Yeah. Although I think Kennedy has a little bit more second, third level range. This kid is a pure downhill. Like, this is the kind of kid you put on your defense, Ryan, whether it's safety or rover, and he's just going to have 100 tackles. And you say, well, you don't want your safety to have 100 tackles. I'm like, yeah, but do you see where most of his tackles happen? They're like at the line of scrimmage.
Jamal Adams, man, I'm telling you. Like,
exactly.
I'm not saying he's going to be Jamal Adams. Yeah. What I'm saying is stylistically, he reminds me a lot of Jamal Adams. Like Jamal Adams
downhill in a hurry.
Yeah. Like Jamal could play from depth a little bit, but what Jamal did best was he was a downhill striker, right? Like he played the alley, he played downhill. That's what he brings to the game.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what the measurables are as far as not the size, because I think that he's a legitimate 6 foot, 6'1", 190 plus pounds, like he's listed. Like he looks like that to me. But I'm interested to see because he does have a couple kick returns where I'm like, oh, a little more speed than maybe I anticipated.
The long speed's good. Yeah, the long speed's good, Ryan. Which is what makes you think maybe he could be a third level guy because maybe that long speed would help him be a little bit more rangy on the back end. But it's just a lot of his game, and I've got to be careful too and take my own advice. I have a buddy of mine who will watch a kid's film and he'll say, "Well, I don't think the kid can play something." I'm like, "Well, what makes you think?" He goes, "Well, he never does it on film." I was like, "Well, was like, Tony, you know that just because he doesn't do it on film doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means you don't know if he can do it. But you've got to be able to look at other things that you see on film. And I've got to be careful with this kid to say, hey, just because he doesn't play on the third level a lot doesn't necessarily mean that he can't. So then I look at other things, and I just, a couple of the concerns I have, like when I watch Teddy Rizak, Ryan, I see a kid that flips his hips like a safety, right? And with this kid, I don't. And that's my only concern a little bit, as I see a guy that I don't know if he does necessarily flip his hips like a safety, but I do see the long speed you're talking about.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, what he lacks in maybe some initial burst, he makes up for because the kid diagnoses incredibly quickly, in my opinion, as a football player. For a junior in high school, this kid's diagnosis ability as a defensive player is really impressive. And that's how you say, well, how does a guy that's not real fast be so productive? And you're like, because he knows where the ball's going to be all the time. And you give him a head start. That's where football IQ can sometimes overcome if you aren't an elite athlete to certain degrees. This kid has that.
That's why high school to college is such an interesting one, Brian. I mean, because we're talking about a lot of kids. I mean, I just did an Oliver Miles breakdown as far as like a film that I put in Tempest, by the way.
Talk about
to tell you that, but
polar opposites.
Yes,
complete polar opposites to this.
What I was gonna say is that it's such a hard evaluation because when you look at like Oliver Miles, for instance, Oliver Miles, you don't have a single clip on his highlight tape of him being a run defender. You don't have a single clip. You have some of him obviously in coverage, which is great. Some really nice stuff in coverage, actually.
And
but
some really nice stuff chasing dudes down from behind where you see speed.
And he's an option, but he's an option quarterback in high school. Like that's what he is, man.
No, Ryan. He's a track kid that plays football right now is really what he boils down to.
49-foot triple jumper, man. Just an absolute insane. But it's like the Brandon Hillman effect a little bit, Brian. Even though you saw more of the safety traits on Hillman's tape than what you see of like Oliver Miles, for instance. But it's like some of these kids are just asked to do so much that it's hard to evaluate it because they don't do something a lot, for one. But in this kid's case, I do see some athleticism where I'm like, I think he could do more from depth than what they ask him to do. But it's just like, why would I ask him to do it when he does this? Right? Like when he does this.
Because a high school head coach's job is to develop kids for the next level, but it's his number 2 job. His number 1 job is to do what he has to do for his high school team to be successful, right? I mean, the best coaches do both, right? And so if this kid helps you be a dominant team in the second level and you're putting him in the slot, and I mean, it's not like we don't have coverage film of him flipping his hips. We do.
Yeah, we do.
He's just doing it from a different kind of position in a different type of place. But he's a solid football player. He's very smart. That's the thing I do like about him. He's very smart. He needs to work on his press technique based on that clip right there. Got whiffed on that one, but good pursuit.
To your point, though, man, that the number 1 obligation for the coaches at his school are to win football games. They went 14-0, won a state championship. So it worked.
Right.
It worked. Right. At the end of the day, it worked.
Right. And they constantly send kids to the next level. So they're doing their job there too. Right. I mean, that's a part of it. And so, there's some stuff to like there, Ryan. There's no doubt. But again, it's just continue to expand the board. Why not go after a kid like this? Maybe you don't have a shot at him. I mean, you see he's projected, favored to go to Ole Miss and other places. But look, you have zero chance to get a kid if you never go after him. I mean, that's rocket science. I know that no one's going to understand what I'm saying there. I say sarcastically, right? But it's serious. I mean, that was always the big complaint we had with the previous staff was like, how do you know you can't get that kid? Right. I mean,
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. Man. I mean, but it's just okay, Mr. Cliche. But
hey man, it's Michael Jordan, baby. It's Michael Jordan.
No, there's no doubt. But it's just one of those things where Blake Ham's right there with you, Ryan. He's right there with you.
He copied.
But it's just one of those things where
white.
Now you have to be careful that you don't spread yourself so thin that you can't spend enough time developing the relationships with the kids on the board. But that's not the case here. I mean, the safety board's not that big.
Right.
Where you can't do that. So I like this offer. I do. Does he shoot to the top of my board at safety? No. If you were to somehow get this kid in the class, is this a good football player? Absolutely. It's a good football player, So yeah, I mean, there's some stuff to like there, but it's about expanding the board is really what it comes down to, because you have guys that you like, DeJuan Lane, Davis Andrews, guys like that are not in decision-making mode right this second. They're going to take their visits. They're going to do those things. So So you're just going to sit back and wait till you get them or miss them, and then hope you can get involved with some of these kids that have taken a bunch of visits other places before you even got on them. I like the strategy. It's a smart strategy, and I like what the staff is doing. They're grinding, man. I mean, Ryan, you saw it on we have an article at irishbreakdown.com of where the coaches are. They're on the road today.
Yep.
I mean, dude, they're out putting in work today. They're seeing a bunch of 2025 kids, going to see the number one offensive lineman in the country down in Carolina. You got 2 coaches going out to Mater Dei today.
Yes.
You got 3 coaches out in California today. They're going all over, and they're putting in the work, and they're getting out and seeing kids. They're out in Oklahoma today. Speaking of Oklahoma, checking out the high school of Nate Roberts, who is a dude at tight end. CJ Nixon. Yeah, he does. He does. So, and you're going to keep saying that every single time we mention him.
Every time there's a Ryan or a Roberts, man.
It's all good. But I like what they're doing. Now they just got to close on the top players. That's the key, right? That's going to be the main thing. And I think as we look back at this, some of these offers were some people aren't going to love and some they're going to like. And I just like the fact that they're working, and then we can kind of get into aspects of, okay, should this be a guy they take or not? And that's part of the fun of the conversation. But very intriguing players have been offered lately, Ryan. I'll say that there have been some very intriguing offers.
And you can go to irishbreakdown.com, because again, I had a recruiting roundup this morning. We hit on 3 of the we hit all 3 of the 2024 kids that were offered this past week, but there were a total of 9, including Julian Lewis, who is the expected to be top player in 2026, quarterback out of Carrollton High School in the state of Georgia. So make sure to go check out that piece. We're going to get into a mailbag next. Before we do, though, start flooding in those questions. MB in front of the questions in the chat, we'll be able to distinguish that very quickly. Before we move on, though, if you could just hit that like button for us, appreciate you. Don't go anywhere, because we still got another segment to get into here. Hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, 5-star reviews, that notification bell at the bottom of the screen. Hit that, because we have a bunch more shows this week. Me and Brian will be here every single day, 1:00 Eastern time.
I'm taking Thursday off.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
It's the first time in my life I've taken my birthday off and decided I'm not going to work.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
That'll change if a kid
really?
that'll change if a kid commits, obviously, because but which I'm not expecting one to right now. But yes, I'm taking Thursday off. Yes. I need it because I need a break, dude. I that.
I get it, man. I get it.
And I just want to, you know what it is, man. I want to do what I've always dreamed of doing. It's that scene from Office Space, like what you do this weekend. Absolutely nothing. It was everything I thought it would be.
Yes,
that's what I want to do on Thursday. I just want to do nothing. I'm gonna sit down, relax, read. I want to read a book. You know how long since I read a book? I love reading books, so I'm just gonna chill. Yeah. May even go mow the lawn a little bit, just relax.
Man, I haven't read a book in a long time, man, which is funny because I was an English literature major and I used to read all the time, and now I just don't have time anymore. So to your point, but yes, happy early birthday to Brian.
Yeah,
so I see a bunch of people
flooding. I'm gonna go to Hanayori. My wife's I'm gonna go to Hanayori. It's a Japanese steakhouse around here that I absolutely love. We're gonna go there. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Japanese steak sounds good.
Yeah,
sounds
good.
Good,
Nathan Milne says, "Let my hair down." I don't know if that's really something I can do, buddy.
Maybe for next year, you're gonna start growing it now. That you'll let it down next year.
Yeah, I love the quote. The quotes start jumping in from from people from that movie. Ricky Carnes, missing work. I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob. It's a great movie.
That's funny.
Great movie. Great.
But like I said, like buttons. Hit that notification bell, subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. That's going to include this section of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. All right, Brian, ready? Mailbag time?
Yeah,
Mailbag time?
Let's do it. Let's
jump
Brandon,
right into it. English literature. That's what I was originally, man. I have a degree in English I have a degree in English, and I also have a degree in special education, and now I'm a journalist. So there you go.
Brian, where did you get your degree from? I know you started at Frostburg, but where did you get your degree from?
So I was only at Frostburg for 1 year. I ended up transferring to Rowan University here in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
What years were you at Rowan?
I graduated from Rowan in 2015. So I was there for 3 years or whatever.
I coached against them way before you got there.
Yes.
They beat us by a point in 2004 because our kicker, we lost 33-32. Our kicker missed 3 freaking extra points in that game. Still mad about that one. But yes. Rowan. Yes. All
It's just
right,
funny
that's
because I went to more Rowan parties before I went to Rowan than when I did after Rowan because I commuted to Rowan. I didn't stay there. It's only half an hour from my house, from my parents' house.
Makes
so,
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I gotcha. All
Talk
right, let's
talk
get
about wasting money though, Brandon. Talk about
I know,
wasting money,
right?
man. English degree is an absolute waste of money. But we're gonna start these questions.
Well,
here.
hopefully you can start using it more. I was going to take a shot at you, and I was just joking around. I didn't mean it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say it. So hopefully you can use that to your advantage with some of your stories. But
oh, thanks.
But that would
appreciate that.
But people wouldn't have realized I'm just kidding with you, and I don't like people that do that. So I'm sorry. I was going to be mean.
I also would have cried off air.
And very sensitive. You and CJ Stroud, two very sensitive dudes, man. I tell you
CJ
what.
Stroud, is he sensitive?
Yeah. Oh, he's like complaining today. I took it as disrespect when they signed Quinn Ewers the year after me. Like they weren't going to sign quarterbacks for the next 3 years. When CJ Stroud was out. That's this kid's perpetually looking to be upset and offended by something. That's my own. Honestly, I love CJ Stroud's film. I love him as a player. That's my biggest concern about him. Is like that dude just seems a little more sensitive than you'd want a quarterback to be. That's my only. That's my only concern on him. But yeah, it's a very talented player. But anyway, let's roll. We got Matt McCarthy starting things off for us.
Matt McCarthy says, with Peyton Woodyard set to take visits to Ohio State and Bama, do you think the staff will try to get him on campus?
They're going to try. I don't think they're trying super hard. I think they understand that Peyton's kind of looking for some things that Notre Dame doesn't have to offer. And I'm not saying that negatively, it's the reality of it. So I don't see that one going anywhere. But I mean, they've reached out, they've talked to him, they never stopped recruiting him. But I think they also know that like we can't offer what he's looking for. And again, I'm not saying that negatively. Yeah, like there's anything illegally going on. I'm not saying it's not every comment like that's meant to be a shot at somebody. I just think he's looking for things that he's looking for a football school. That's really what it boils down to. And that's not Notre Dame.
And I have talked to Peyton over the last few days, especially after he set up a couple of those visits, and there is nothing imminent to go to Notre Dame. So we'll just leave it there. No update to be made at this time. But if there is one, boards.irishbreakdown.com is the place to go.
We'll give it to you. Yeah. Yes. And honestly, Ryan, I like Peyton as a player, but I think after his sophomore film, I loved his junior film was very good. But I'm on a point now where like he's more of a rover to me right now than he is a deep safety.
He kind of has that body type too, where he's going to be like 220. Like who he reminds me of, which it would have been fun if he ended up at USC. You remember Darnell Bing? Like that's who he reminds me of. Darnell was a good player though, man.
He was from Poly, right? Wasn't Darnell Bing from Poly? I think he was.
So, man.
He's a very good
but
player.
like Darnell Bing playing in today's game would be
he'd be a will.
Than he was strong.
He'd be
safety.
a will. Darnell Bing would be a dude at will in today's game. And that's a fun thing to do, Ryan. Sometimes is you look back and say, boy, if this guy could have played in today's era.
Yes.
Like if Steve Atwater played in today's era, he's a linebacker. I mean, just
Well, it's like I know Reggie White moved inside at some points, but like today, Reggie White would just be a kick butt 3-tech all day.
He'd be a bigger version of Aaron Donald. I mean, he just would just destroy people in the middle. Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And he would get called for a penalty like a million times for the head slap, which that's more Deacon
Lawrence
Jones
Taylor in today's game. I mean, he would have.
He would do exactly. Now he's one of those guys who would do exactly what he did then. He would be a 3-4 edge linebacker, and he would just rush the quarterback all day.
Yeah, but he would get a million penalties in today's game.
Oh my gosh,
absolute million. They would just call it like unnecessary roughness, like hitting too hard. Like, get out of here.
You breathe too heavily on the quarterback in the NFL. 15 yards, you're going to get fined. It's one of the many reasons I just can't watch NFL as much, man. It's just.
I get it, man.
Ridiculous.
I get it.
Ridiculous.
Every week I see a roughing the passer call in the NFL now where I'm just like, dude, barely touched.
Is this even football? Is this like, it's like, is this even football anymore? Yeah. Yeah, like I tell you, like I don't like today's receivers are incredible, right? And the manner in which they work on their craft is incredibly impressive. So don't take this the wrong way. But receivers now, I don't respect them from a toughness standpoint the way that I used to because they don't have to be tough.
Yeah,
you don't have to like be worried going over the middle because there's a Dennis Smith or a Ronnie Lott or a Steve Atwater or a Chuck Cecil. Like Chuck Cecil would literally get ejected from every single game he plays if he was in today's game. Same as Steve Atwater. Like that big hit on Christian McCoy probably get flagged on in today's era.
Well, Brian, really whose career it ended early that is in this era was DJ Swearinger was a really good player for a few years, man. Yeah. But then eventually it was just like he just kept getting too many penalties because that's his game. Like he's an intimidator over the middle of the field. Like that's what he does. And they were just like he couldn't adjust. He couldn't adjust to it, which is just crazy.
Ugh, okay. Let's It's going to get me mad. I don't want to get mad today. I'm in a good mood today.
Next question is also from Matt McCarthy, who says, is Jalen McLean a must-get considering the need at safety? After watching film, I can't understand how recruiting services have 15 to 20 other safeties ahead of him. Very underrated player. I would agree that he's a very underrated player.
Is he a must-get? I mean, I would say he's the type of guy that, they need to get. I mean, they need to get
that
high-level safeties like Jalen McLean. There's no doubt.
Yes.
I mean, they're not in a very good position with him right now. And it is what it is. I mean, they're still trying. They went out and saw him last Thursday, Ryan? I think they went out and saw him.
Yeah, and it was like I talked to Jalen because he's a New Jersey guy, right? Like it was received well, but like there's still no plans to get up to South Bend at this time. He's
looking for things that Notre Dame doesn't have to offer. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. He's a bad kid. None of that. It's just he's just not interested in what Notre Dame has to offer. And it's weird because he's a perfect Notre Dame fit in a lot of ways. A very good student, goes to a very good school. He's the kind of kid that plays as a freshman at Notre Dame. I mean, he's really good. Yeah. So he's a must get in that regard, but they're just not going to get him. But Ryan, I'm bummed that he's not going to come Notre Dame because he's a top 100 player. I don't get why he's not I mean, he's one of those kids that you look on film and there's some kids, Ryan, that you could watch and you're like, I see now why maybe some like I'll tell you a perfect example, Jaden Greathouse. Yeah. I actually understood why some people weren't as high on Jaden Greathouse as we were. I get it because there are some people, they have traits that they look for, and some people look for speed a little bit more or whatever. A guy that plays like Jaden Greathouse, they expect to be 6'4", 215. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it.
It's an acquired taste for some people. I get it. Yeah.
But when I look at Jalen McLean and I see that 247 Sports and Rivals have him as a 3-star, I say, I don't think you watched the right kid on film. I really don't think you saw the right kid. Now, maybe, and I've done that before, right? Where I watch a kid and I'm like, I watched the wrong kid. Or you watch sophomore film and then that kind of that's like, perfect example, Grant Bricks. I did not like Grant Bricks' film at all as a sophomore. I just didn't. And I remember we had Brian Smith on a few weeks ago when you were on vacation, and he's like, this kid's athletic. And I'm like, is he really? Well, I hadn't watched his film in a while because I didn't think Notre Dame was necessarily in a great place with him. And then I went and watched his junior film, and I'm like, I texted Brian. I was like, dude, you nailed that one. Like, this kid is really good. Like, he is really, it's just a different guy. Remember Taylor Dever, the late Taylor Dever? Yes. He was like that. His junior film, people say, well, how did people miss Taylor Dever? He didn't have any Power 5 offers as a junior. I'm like, because he wasn't a Power 5 player as a junior. That's why he didn't have Power 5 offers. But just like you watch a senior film, like, this is a different dude. This is not the same guy.
Guys sometimes develop at different rates, man.
Right? But sometimes you do watch the wrong guy. I mean, it makes me think, like, did you guys evaluate the wrong dude? Is there like a Jalen McLean in like Southern Jersey or Northern Jersey that you thought was this kid that isn't this kid? Because I don't know how you watch that kid and say he's not a top 100 football player. You could say, okay, top 150, like ESPN has a 157. I'm not going to argue with that. I'd have him in the top 100, but I'm not going to argue with that. On 3 is a 105. But you have him as Rivals has him as number 48 safety in the country, and 247 is number 37 safety in the country. Like, I don't know what you're looking at.
I'm not sure there's 5 or 7 better safeties in 2024 than him.
Agree.
Like, he's a very good player, man.
And we're saying that as we just sat down and admitted he's not coming Notre Dame. Sadly, he's not coming Notre Dame.
Unless there's no changes drastically there, yes.
They have the kid from who's a nice player, but they have that Torres kid from Irvington ahead of him. Like, he's not even the top safety in Jersey, according to them. And I'm just like, I don't get it, man. I don't know what y'all are looking at, because that kid, when I watch him play, I'm like, that's a dude. He can run. He's physical. He's not powerful, but he's physical. You know what I mean? He can cover, but he's instinctive. I don't get it. He's a top 100 player to me. I wish he would give Notre Dame a better look, but he's not. But he's a dude.
Ideal free safety in today's game, man. Ideal free safety. Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
Next question from Matt McCarthy. Got a bunch of good ones today.
Yeah, he's got 3 right at the top, and I just wanted to get them all out there.
His question is, why is Chris Cole rated so low by pretty much everyone? With all the spread offenses today, he's a perfect linebacker to have. Agree with that. Once he gets the weight room, he'll be a monster in college. Matt, this is another one where I keep talking about these recruiting rankings, Brian. I keep talking about it, man. There's some weird ones this year.
On 3 has him as the number 135 linebacker in the country.
Insane, man. Absolutely insane.
And now, again, I don't think, if I had to predict right now, I don't think Notre Dame gets Chris Cole. right now.
Probably not.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think he probably goes to like Penn State or an SEC school right now. Now, Notre Dame's in it. They're trying. He likes Notre Dame. I'm just saying if I had to make a prediction today, it would probably not be Notre Dame.
Yep.
But I watch that kid play, and I'm like, I don't see what you're saying. Now, here's the thing. What are some of the reasons why? Okay, number one is I don't know of any camps he's gone to, number one. Yeah. Number two, he's in Salem, Virginia. He's out in the middle of nowhere, right? And now Salem has produced some really good football players, but he's not at a, that's where they have the Division III national championship every year. I mean, it's kind of like Northwestern Virginia. It's in Shenandoah area. It's not like a place. It's kind of near Roanoke. It's not a place that a lot of scouting services are going to get out and see the kid at some 7-on-7 tournament or go to his high school. College coaches are getting out there now. Sure. He's got a very impressive offer list. And I mean, Georgia's offered him, Notre Dame's offered him, Miami's offered him, Penn State's offered him. I mean, Tennessee's offered him, Florida State have offered him, A&M, USC. I mean, colleges know what this kid is. Yes. I honestly don't know. I mean, part of me wonders if because there's so much more emphasis on camps, that because he hasn't gone to any camps or played any 7-on-7s that I'm aware of, that they just don't know about him. I mean, ESPN and Rivals don't even have him graded. That's wild. I mean, well, and I'm just like, I look at this kid, Ryan, and I'm like, this guy's like a dude.
That's like DeMello Jones. Remember, Brian, when he was offered and no one had him ranked? Right. Like, no one had him ranked. I'm like, and then all of a sudden he's a high 4-star. I'm like, he didn't go to any camps or anything. Like, how'd that happen?
So Rivals has him ranked as a 5.7 3-star, right? Yep. But
Yep.
here's why I know they actually have not evaluated him. Because they have him as a 5.7 3-star, but they do not have him ranked in the state or at the position. And so that tells me they have not evaluated him. And how I know that is because I look at the Virginia rankings for the state, and they have the top 30 players of Virginia. They have a kid named Kashawn Henderson is the number 30 player in the state. He's a 5.5 star.
So it's lower. Yeah.
Much lower.
Yeah.
And so this is what I try to explain to y'all the other day. What Rivals does, the number 20 player in the state of Virginia is a 5.6 3-star, right? Giving you just further proof that this kid they gave a 5.7 3. So why? Why did they do that? The number 15 player in the state of Virginia is a 5.6 3-star. Let me go to the number 10 player in the state of Virginia. Okay, now you start getting up to the 5.7 range. So here's the point, right? Here's the point, Ryan. What I've said to y'all before is why you got to be very careful looking at rankings. So how does a kid with a higher overall star grade ranking, 5.7 3-star, how is he not ranked in the top 30 in the state of Virginia, but a bunch there's 30 kids ranked, almost 2/3 of them are ranked lower than him on the 5.7 grade, but he's not ranked in the state. Why? Because they look at the offer list and they say, well, we haven't watched the film of him, but he's got this really good offer list, so let's just throw a 5.7. That's exactly what they do, Ryan. I'm telling you, I know that for a fact. And that's why you can have a kid that's ranked higher than other kids in the state of Virginia, but not actually ranked in the state rankings because they haven't broken his film down. How the freaking heck do you not have this kid evaluated and graded at this point in time? Like that's the thing for me. It's why I keep telling y'all there's more and more reason that I tell you over and over and over and over again why the rankings need to be looked at. They're fun to look at, honestly, Ryan. I mean,
it is,
but you've got to look at them in the proper framework and with the proper understanding of what they are now. They're not what they used to be. And I've said this before. When Barton Simmons would try to evaluate a kid, I felt like he, whether I agreed or disagreed with him, was sort of staking his reputation on his evaluation of that kid.
Which is
and
how
they
it should
really
be.
want it exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
And the old Rivals guys back in the day when I first started following Rivals, they were that way too. Now I'd have my disagreements with them, but you always felt like they were at least trying to get it right. Tom Lemming tries to get it right. Now he clearly has a northern bias, but that's fine.
Sure.
He never doesn't hide it though.
He doesn't.
Right? But he's giving you his honest assessment of kids. So much of recruiting nowadays is either misguided in that they just put all this emphasis on stuff that happens without pads on, or B, it's for show. Yep. Or C, it's like there's business decisions behind where they have kids ranked. And that's why I just don't take it seriously. And I look at the person who's like in charge of recruiting and scouting for 247. I'm like, I worked with that guy. I have no clue how to evaluate film. None. And he's in charge of the rankings process for 247. So it's just hard to take those things seriously anymore, to be completely honest with you. And that's why I don't. But how do you look at this kid, Ryan, and you don't see a kid like you? Like, here's the thing: offer lists aren't the end all be all either. Look at Teddy Rizak.
Yes.
But sometimes you got to be willing, and this is what I do when I look at a kid. If like I see an offensive lineman, I'm like, I don't love the kid, but then I find out like Wisconsin wanted him. This is back when they in Iowa wanted him, and Houston wanted him. Like, okay, I need to watch this kid's film again. I need to get some game film and really study this kid because guys that I respect have offered this kid. When you look at a kid like Chris Cole's offer list and you say, okay, that should not affect your ranking. It shouldn't. But it should at least cause you to go back and look at it with a more open-minded view to say, I might be missing something here.
There's always a verification to this process.
And there needs to be that. And sometimes you're like, you know what? I see, maybe I watched some older film. I thought I had junior film, but it was actually sophomore film. And I see a different, or maybe I watched a bad game. Because like, we got to watch game film. But what if you watched the worst game the kid played? Sure. You have no context. You had flu the night before, right? I mean, there's all types of different things. And that's why you got to watch multiple games if you can, and the highlights, and do all that kind of stuff. Because that kid is, to me, that's at the very least a top 150 football player, Ryan. The very least.
Brian, he was one of those kids when they first offered him. I'm like, okay, I get that one. Like I saw like 5 plays. I'm like, yeah, that kid's good. Good.
You don't have to watch a whole lot of highlights to say this kid's good. Now you say, okay, how good is, where does he stack up? That's where you watch more film. But it didn't take long for you to be like, yep, okay, I see that one. For sure. Good question. Good question, Matt. You got us fired up today with a couple of your questions, man. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Next question is from USMA87, who says, do you predict the preferred walk-on safety will get on the field this year, only special teams or as a safety? That, of course, is Luke Talich, who is a safety out of the state of Wyoming for this question.
I hope not, because I'd like to see him redshirt. That's my thing. Now, Luke, I put Luke in the same category of some of the other incoming freshmen, because I've said this before. I know he's a preferred walk-on, but when I'm evaluating Luke Talich and I'm evaluating the 2023 recruiting class, I count him in my evaluation as a scholarship player, because he's a scholarship talent, right? He turned down multiple Pac-12 offers committable offers to come to Notre Dame.
Yes.
I hope he doesn't play, though, because he's a guy that I want to see be a 5-year player, Ryan. I want to see what his body looks like when he's a 5th-year guy.
Oh, man.
I really do.
Like he's going to be like a 6'3", 220-pound, like
at least
monster rover. Like
it would not shock me if he's playing inside at some point in time, Ryan. It really
wouldn't be
would.
shocked either.
It's going to depend on his frame, right? That's what it comes down to. But like, he reminds me a lot of, and this is my perfect example for a fourth. My prototype rover is Thomas Brown, who Mike Elko had it at Wake Forest. Now, I'd like a guy a little bit rangier, but as far as the body type, do you remember him at all from Wake back in 16?
220 or something?
Oh, my gosh. Right? Rangy, smooth, rangy. Now, he wasn't real fast. If I don't, he didn't play fast. I don't know what he timed up. He didn't really play fast. So, I mean, I would want a more dynamic athlete, but as far as the body type, but that's what I see in Luke Talich. I see a very similar body type, 6'3", long, 220 plus. Physical. You see a lot of that rover ability in him, Ryan. But right now, he's like, well, let me see what he does at safety first, and then see if we need to make that move. But my hope is he doesn't play, like maybe 3 or 4 games on special teams, because I really want to see that kid be a 5-year player. I really do.
I said this before, but I would be shocked if he's not a scholarship player, and I would be shocked if he wasn't playing football for Notre Dame at some point in his career. Like, he's not your typical walk-on kid. He's a Division I football player. Well, Brian, we had somebody in the show say last week that they heard he had gotten a scholarship, which we said on the board that he had not been offered a scholarship, kind of to refute that. But when someone said that, though, my mind didn't go like, that's absurd, that's ludicrous. I'm like, maybe that's possible. I mean, like,
that's why we looked into it, because you're like, that makes sense. Like look, there's no way, in my opinion, I don't see any way they can go through 4 years of him not being on scholarship. I
don't think so.
I think it's going to be tough, but if you can get a year out of him, great, but I mean, he's a scholarship caliber player. I mean, maybe 2 at the most. I mean, I would be curious what if there's any conversations about that with Notre Dame. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'd be very curious about that.
Same.
But he's a scholarship caliber football player. There's no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind.
Next question is from Corey Hardy, who says, what position is the biggest need and what recruits would be most excited about for that said position?
That's a good question, Ryan. Can we go one offense, one defense? I think it'd be fun. Offense is pretty, because it's pretty easy. It's offensive line. And the recruit I'm most excited about, it's probably Gearby Lambert. But I'm telling you what, man, the more I've dove into Grant Brix's film, that's a nasty physical dude that's pretty athletic. I don't know. I need to try and find some more film of him actually pass blocking.
Yep.
But he looks more linear athletically and lateral athletically than Sullivan Absher did as a junior, in my opinion. And so he's a kid I'm pretty fired up about. But I mean, obviously Gearby stuff, the guy at the highest ceiling. So those two guys are probably the ones I'm most excited about. Ryan, anybody that you would throw into that conversation?
I think it has to be Gearby because, Corey, to your question, not only is it the biggest need on offense, because we agree there, offensive line, but also, Brian, we need a guy that can play left tackle. Like Notre Dame needs that guy. And I'm just like, Grant Brix is a really good player. I would love Grant Brix in the class, but he's more of a right tackle type than he is a left tackle type.
From what we see so far, right?
Yes.
Right. From what we know of him so far. Agree with you, Ryan.
So it would be Gearby Lambert for me, no doubt. Defensively, man, I'm going to say it out. I'm going to say it right now, Brian. Like we have, look, there's a couple needs right now in this defensive class. There's still some spots that need to get shored up.
Three big needs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument for safety, linebacker, or defensive line as far as the biggest needs, right?
It's right up the middle for me. It's D tackle, linebacker, safety. I mean, it's right up the middle. Yeah. So, but the biggest of all three of them to me is still safety. Because at linebacker, you can afford – here's the thing about linebacker, and we should have said this during the Teddy Rizak thing. This is the year you can take a chance on a kid like that. This is the year you can take a flyer on a kid like that because you recruited linebackers so well the 2 years before.
Right.
And because you've gone through a semester of you saw Jaden Osbury in person, you saw Drake Bowen in person, and you saw Preston Zinner in person, and you realize like this is the conclusion the staff came to very quickly with Drake and Jaden, and they came to by the end of the spring with Preston Zinner is we hit. We hit with these guys. Right, we hit with them, and same thing with Nolan Ziegler and Jalen Sneed. Now they're probably ideally like a guy short numbers wise, but then you think about okay, but what about Luke Talich? You got to think about him possibly being in this conversation. But the point is, Ryan, you hit on the linebacker in the last two classes, and all and the two kids that you have at linebacker from the 2022 class, both redshirted, in Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler. Yep. You hit on this year's class, so this is a year you can afford to. Because it's two reasons. Number one, because you hit, and number two, because it's not a very good linebacker year. You can afford to take some flyers on some kids that may need some time. So that's why linebacker to me is not my number one. Safety, two things. Number one, you can't afford to miss. And number two, you need to land dudes that can help you out now. You have to. Because
so I know your answer now. I know your answer.
Yeah, it's safety. I mean, it's safety. It's
no, I know safety. The player. I know the player too. It's probably DeJuan Lane, if I have that right.
I'm torn between him and Davis Andrews. To me, I love both of those guys, but I mean, DeJuan Lane's the guy that has the body to play or sooner. But I think, for me right now, it's 1A, 1B. Their grade on my board is like a point away, a point off, and DeJuan gets it because he's just a little bit bigger and stronger. I have. Davis grades out a little bit higher on the athletic stuff. They're both pretty versatile guys. They're my 1A, 1B at safety. Honestly, at this point in time, Ryan, for me, of the realistic options, in my opinion. But Ryan, to your point though, why did you think DeJuan Lane? Because you think physically he's probably the guy that's most ready to come in and play right away. But you're going to need a safety to come in and at least be in the 2 deep. Yeah. Because we're all fired up about Xavier Watts right now, right? But here's the thing. But what if Xavier does exactly what we think he's going to do? Dude's a senior. Yeah. It's not a given that he's going to come back for a 5th year. I hope he does, but it's not a given. And if he leaves, or if there's an injury to him or Ramon Henderson, you're really screwed numbers wise. Yeah. Because of your just complete disaster of recruiting that position for years. You completely struck out in the 22 class at safety. Completely struck out.
If you don't do well this cycle, man, it's bad because, I mean, Brian, if I'm a safety right now, I look at that depth chart and I'm like, I could play as a freshman And yet that's
Yeah.
still not overly enticing for whatever reason to some guys. I don't know, man. It's not gonna be great. Because I agree with you. I think safety, and then I also had thoughts to Justin Scott playing defensive tackle in the defense. Like that was the other one, because it's just like he's the best player on the board defensively, and you also still need to continue to improve that defensive line. So whether it's safety or it's interior defensive line, I'm good with it. I think that you hit on a couple of the guys that make sense at safety, but I would also throw in Justin Scott at defensive tackle, because it's just
he's
such a big
best.
need.
He's top overall, right? Like that's the big one. But where I went with this, Ryan, is he was asking the question about the biggest need, and then the player that's most important at that position.
Right.
The top number one target on the board for the defensive class is Justin Scott. I mean, it's there's no question.
Right.
That's easy. But I was kind of sticking to what the question was, which is at the position that is the biggest need, who are the guy you most excited about? I think probably the reason I would lean towards DeJuan Lane as I think about it, Ryan, is because the thing that's the tiebreaker between him and Davis Andrews is I really want to get back in the state of Maryland and start having more success in the state of Maryland.
That's fair. Yeah.
But as players, they're almost identical as far as the ranking. Now, they're different type of player, right, in my opinion, but that's kind of where I would have those two, in my opinion. I did want to respond to something else here real quick, Ryan, too, from I want to let's see here. Brandon Plesner says, how about just taking two solid linebackers instead of a flyer? See, to me, I'd rather take the flyer than the solid linebacker. Right? To me, the flyer kid has a chance to be something special down the road. Right? You're taking a flyer on a guy that you think has a very high ceiling. A solid linebacker, more often than not, just turns out to be just a solid linebacker. To me, that's part of the strategy, though. We did so well the previous 2 years that you can take a flyer. Why not take a flyer? Right, on a kid. And I'm not saying that Teddy Rizak has to be that guy. You know, I mean, to me, Chris Cole has a lower floor than like Kingston, for example, sure. Right?
Yep.
So you're taking a risk that the floor doesn't get where you need it to be, but it's worth the risk because the ceiling is incredibly high. I mean, to me, like potential day 1, day 2 draft picked high, in my opinion. Now he's got a ways to go to get there. But that's what the ceiling is for a kid like that. Why not take a flyer on a guy like that, right? And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And then Brandon followed up, says, okay, well, 2 stellar linebackers then. Okay, but fine. If you were to tell me right now that tomorrow Kingston will commit, and then on Wednesday Chris Cole will commit, that's my top 2 linebackers on the board. Say, okay, so you just stop recruiting linebackers. I'm like, why? If there's a kid out there with a high ceiling that's raw that you're taking a bit of a flyer on, and you've targeted 3 as the number you want to take in this class because you only have 5 from the previous 2 years. And as much as I'm like, hey, great, Jalen Steed, you know, he redshirt. Jalen Steed's probably not a 5-year player. He's probably not. And so you say, okay, well, why not take that other kid? Because you don't need him to play early on. And if you do get a Kingston, for example, or a Chris Cole, and you have him with the guys from last year, it even incentivizes you even more to take a flyer on a kid like that, in my opinion. Now, if you get to the point where like, hey, do we take a third linebacker or a third safety? Well, duh, you take the third safety. You have to take the third safety. But that's kind of not where they are. And then the other part, Brandon says, well, what about because the 25 class is loaded to linebacker? Number one, I couldn't tell you a linebacker in the 25 class right now that I know Notre Dame's going to get. Do you, Ryan? I mean, can you think of a guy that right now you say, boy, if that guy was going to decide today, he's going to pick Notre Dame? I don't know that there's that guy, in my opinion. I know that there's guys I wish that Anthony Sacca was ready to commit like right now. You know, I really like Christian Jones. I mean, probably my top linebacker on the board right now in the 23 class is Noah McHale, probably. I mean, if I have to go back and look at it, but he's a dude. You know, there's a lot of really good linebackers in this class, but can you tell me right now the guy that you definitely think Notre Dame's going to get? I can't.
No, not right now.
And here's the other part.
Conclusion.
Who's that kid going to – because we're talking about Teddy Rizak, right? I mean, that's what we're beating around the bush. That's what we're talking about. Who's he scaring off in next year's class? Who's going to be afraid to come to Notre Dame because they signed Teddy Rizak as their third linebacker?
I think Brandon's more saying like keeping the spot open, I guess.
But the thing is, you don't have to, if you take him, you don't have to take one less guy next year. You're now in position where you're just keep taking 3 a year at this point in time. That's kind of where they're at right now.
Yeah.
So there's no spot that gets close. Look, you're basically just trying to talk yourself into justifying passing on this kid. And I get it, right? I understand it is what it is. But there's just no need. I think Ryan said it perfectly earlier. How will I feel about them taking Teddy Rizak? Talk to me when I know who the other two linebackers in the class are going to be.
Yep.
Then I'll have an opinion. I'll be able to give you. I can tell you what I think of him right now as a player, what I like, and what my concerns are. But as far as evaluating how he fits into the class, talk to me at the end. Because like I feel the same way a little bit, kind of like I did with Cole Sullivan. Okay, I mean, I like this kid more than Cole Sullivan, to be completely honest with you. I'm not the biggest Cole Sullivan fan in the world. But it's like, well, I got to know who they're going to get with him, right? Before I can tell you, if I'm going to take the flyer on that kind of guy. This kind of kid I'm cool with, as long as there's another kid in the class by the name of Kingston Villiamesa. Get him, and I'm cool with this. Because that's how I feel about like kids like this, Ryan. If you're going to take a kid like this at a position, you better take a dude at that position as well, right? I mean, I'll take a flyer on Carson Hobbs because I got Leonard Moore.
Sure.
Right? Like, I'll take a flyer on Kennedy Urlacher if you're going to tell me I'm also going to get a Davis Andrews or DeJuan Lane. Right? Like, I'll take a flyer on a guy like Isaiah Canyon, although I don't think it's much of a flyer, but some people do, because I've got Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert. Very much high floor guys, right?
Yep.
And that's how I feel about it, is you got to compliment it correctly. And if you like this kid's upside and you want to take that shot on him and you feel, as long as you land those other dudes, great. I mean, that's great. And he mentioned his 3 for next year. He said Anthony Sacca, Noah McHale, and Christian Jones. That's Notre Dame's linebacker class last year. Sign me up.
Yes.
Sign me up for real. Ryan, have you seen Noah McHale? Have you seen his film?
Yep.
Oh
California
my
kid.
gosh.
Yep. Very explosive. Very explosive. Yeah. That's your him at Will, Christian Jones at Mike, and then Anthony Sacca at Rover to start, and then maybe transitions to Will. Like, yeah.
That is an athletic, physical linebacking class. Like,
yes.
That is oh boy.
All long as well. I mean,
my gosh,
shortest guy there is 6'3". So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. That'd be one heck of a linebacker class. No question.
Yep. We had a super chat from Rob Osgood. Thank you so much, Rob. Hey guys, about Teddy Rizak, all I want to know is he can play. I know Notre Dame can't recruit all 5 stars. Things are going to be in the right direction, and I am excited.
Here's the thing for me, Rob, is I just don't know if I have enough faith right this second in Al Golden to just give him the benefit of the doubt like I do with like a Karson Hobbs and Mike Mickens, right? If Mike Mickens were to go after a corner like that was a similar place as like a Teddy Rizak, right, Ryan? Like if it was a kid that you looked at and said, okay, I see some things, but I have some question marks and I have some concerns here and some concerns there. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I trust Mike Mickens. I trust Mike Mickens exponentially because of what he has proven. If, when Harry Heastand says, hey, I think this kid can play tackle, and I look at the film and I don't think he can play tackle, I'm like, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's proven to me that he can identify and evaluate and recruit that kind of player. And he gets it right a big chunk of the time. Mike Mickens same way. I don't know that I have that level of faith in Al Golden. And I know what he did at Temple but he constantly brought in guys like that at Miami that just never panned out. Now, maybe Miami wasn't coached well enough, or, maybe that was the case. And who knows, there could have been more issues at play there than just bad evaluations, but he just hasn't earned that for me at this point in time. Now, having said that, when I look at the film, I'll tell you the things I like. Can this kid play football? Yeah, this kid can play football. Can he run? Yeah, he can run. The question that we have, rightfully so, is does he project to be like? I'll tell you this: there are kids I recruited at the Division III level that I coached I coached a cornerback at Christopher Newport, and it's a situation where it's a situation where this kid named Rob Rodriguez, and hold on one second. So a kid named Rob Rodriguez was cornerback at Christopher Newport. He was a phenomenal football player, fast, like 4'4" kid. he could walk up by. We had an offensive lineman named Chris. I think it was Chris Cole. I think is actually the kid's name. Something like Chris something. It's 2 C's. Backup offensive line. He's like 6'3.5", like 300 some pounds. Rob could walk up behind this kid, put his hands on Chris's shoulder pads, and leap over him, use them to propel himself over. Rob was 5'6". And he actually got a tryout with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he was 5'6", like 155 pounds. Like athletically, he could play with anybody. I mean, he was a freaky athlete. I mean, he had an interception in a playoff game against my alma mater, actually, where he's playing corner, and he wasn't even playing cover 3. And they threw a seam route, and he just came over and just dove. And I mean, it was just like, good God, that was just a ridiculous play. But he's 5'6", 155 pounds. And that's the thing with this kid is this kid runs like a Notre Dame linebacker. This kid has instincts like you'd want from a Notre Dame linebacker. My question is, can this kid get to the size that you need to be a Notre Dame linebacker? That's my big question. Does he have the power to play like a Notre Dame linebacker? Those are my questions. And I think that those are the things you look for. I want to take a break right now. So Ryan had to leave, and I'm going to ask all of you that believe in the power of prayer like me to keep him and his wife in your prayers. So Ryan just got a message. His wife had to be taken to the hospital, and as you know, he's due for his second child in a little less than a month, and just there's some concerns there. So just I don't get into too much of it. I did ask Ryan if it was okay that I tell you all at least that, and so please keep him in your prayers because obviously there's some concern there. So he will not be back with us for the show today. I'm going to finish it up, right? But just please keep Ryan in your prayers today, folks, because obviously he looked very concerned when he left, but he doesn't know a whole lot right now. He just got that call, but they had to go take his wife to the hospital. So just keep him in your prayers and his baby in your prayers, please, as we go through. So I want to get back on track here, but yeah, just keep my guy in your prayers, folks. I appreciate that very much. Jimmy Smith with a question. He says, Marty Auer played well in the spring game. He's the walk-on safety. Any chance he can get some PT? Jimmy, I'll tell you what, I don't know if he's a guy that I would really want as part of my safety rotation week after week after week, because I don't know that I don't know about his like coverage skills, but he's a really pretty quality athlete. But I'll tell you something right now. That's a kid that if you put him in the game against Navy, he probably has 15 tackles. He's the kind of kid that you can put on special teams, and he doesn't play special teams like you'd say like a walk-on. He could be a really good special teams player. I guess a good football player. You know, again, does he have the speed to be an every down safety at Notre Dame? I don't know the answer to that. He's not the biggest guy, but he will hit you, and he's smart, and he can run pretty well. So he's a guy that I would certainly keep an eye on. And would not be shocked if number 19 is running down on kickoffs and punts this year. Wouldn't be shocked by that at all. Or even on the front line of the kick return team. Wouldn't be shocked by that at all. He's a good football player. Really good football player. Ant VR says, how much of an impact do you think the quality of Notre Dame's athletic facilities has on high school recruits' decision-making process? So here's where I'm at with that one. And this is a very good question. To me, it's one of those things where you're not going to get a kid on campus who loves Notre Dame, wants to be at Notre Dame, and just sees all the value, but the facilities aren't good enough, so he doesn't come. That's not what we're talking about. What it comes down to is it's a situation where you look at it and say, but what if things are like really close? He loves the academic piece of Notre Dame, but the football piece over here is better. He likes the coaches here at Notre Dame, but the scheme fit is better over here at this other place. Notre Dame is a little farther away from home, and that school is closer, so that's an advantage there. It's really tough picking between the two schools. And then you say, okay, but this school has better facilities, better training program. They've got a better nutrition program. They've got these cool sleep pods that help you with recovery and all these. Then all of a sudden it becomes a deal breaker. When everything else is kind of equal, it can be that kind of deal breaker where it sends you over the top and allows you to pick that school. I think that's where it matters a lot more. Give me 1 second. need to here real quick. So very good question, Ant. Very good question. Bob Kosky says, when the heck is the administration going to loosen up on requirements so we can stop missing out on elite studs? Bob, I don't think that's the argument that I care to have, honestly. There are so many kids out there. Like, for example, Keon Keeley was like a 3.4 GPA. Peyton Bone was like a 3.2 GPA. I'm trying to think. Dante Moore, his grades were fine. I think he was about around a 3.0 or higher. I mean, I think his junior year, he had like 2 semesters where it was like a 4.0. Like, the only kid they lost because academics was Brandon Hillman. And I have my issues with that. I have my issues with how that went down. But the academic requirements is not what's keeping Notre Dame from being a big-time football program. It's not. I think the admissions office needs to work with Notre Dame a bit more, and they'll loosen it. It's always back and forth. They'll loosen, tighten. There are so many more bigger issues at Notre Dame right now than academic requirements that I care to spend most of my time on. There's a situation here and there that I'll have beef with, but overall, I mean, from everything I've been told, the admissions department has tightened up its standards a little bit since Marcus Freeman's taken over, but they still work with them. And I think they did not do a good job with the Brandon Hillman situation. But look, the reality is there's plenty of kids out there that are big-time football players that are also big-time students. That to me isn't the issue. There's a lot of things the administration needs to do a better job with. A lot. To me, that's not one of the ones that I'm just going to spend a lot of time fighting on, to be honest with you. Matt McCarthy asks, do you think the staff has a preference between Grant Brix and Styles Prescott? Would they take whoever commits first? I don't know about a preference. That's not a question I've asked. What I have been told is that they would take whoever wants to come first. So basically, they're looking at 4 spots. My understanding is like Prescott, Brix, a couple other guys are sort of guys that they want to get one of. Liam Andrews is one they like. I don't think he's as high on them as they are on him, but that's kind of one. But it is a situation where they would take one of those and then basically recruit Gearby Lambert and trying to get Gearby Lambert. That's what I've been told is kind of the plan. We'll see if it gets to that. And I don't know the answer to that question if he's going to come, but that's the plan is right now. You don't need 4 linemen. You don't need 4 minus class. I think they'd like 4 if it's the right 4. So I don't think it's a situation, Matt, where if Grant Brix wanted to come, they'd say, hold off. We need to find out about Styles. Or if Styles wanted to commit, they'd say, hold off. We got to find out what's going on with Grant first. I think that they would take my understanding is they would take the first one that wants to commit at that point in time. All right. Rob Osgood asks, hey guys, great info on the boards today. Thank you. Question is, with the influx of recruiting in North Carolina and Georgia, where else do you see Notre Dame targeting for the future? So he's talking about an article that I did at irishbreakdown.com, and it gets into how you can kind of evaluating Notre Dame's recruiting strategy and looking at it from the standpoint of the NFL draft and how the NFL draft is, what states are producing talent, and showing how Notre Dame's shift in strategy is smart based on that. There's a lot of talk about how, Florida, and Florida's legit, but Florida's number 2 in the last 5 years of producing NFL players. And I believe that's even inflated a little bit more because my understanding when I look at these breakdowns of where kids are coming from, and let me just pull it up real quick. I'm going to try to find the articles, NFL draft picks. Let's see. I'm going to try to find this here real quick. But I believe when I read the articles, if I remember correctly, that when they do them, like they count IMG guys as Florida kids, even though like a lot of Florida kids or a lot of the IMG kids aren't necessarily from Florida. So, for example, I'm looking at Florida in 2019 produced 34 kids to the NFL. And there's, 1, 2, 3 from IMG Academy, right? Well, I'm pretty sure that one of those kids from IMG Academy wasn't actually from the state of Florida, if I remember correctly. So, you look at it, I'm actually going to look that up because I don't believe he was from the state of Florida. So let me just look that up here real quick just to make sure that I'm correct on that. Yeah, he was from Georgia, I believe. And I'm talking about Isaac Nada, right? So I believe he was a kid that was from the state of Georgia, but they count him as being from Florida. So Florida's number 2, and there's even going to be, not a bunch. It's probably like maybe 10 guys at the most. But the point is, there's a lot of guys that are going to be on there that you look at and say, man, like that's not really a Florida guy, but it's still high. But Texas is number 1. That's the whole point. I took that long road to get there. But Texas is number 1. They had 155 guys. Florida was number 2 with 150. And then number 3 is Georgia at 108. Number 4 is California. Well, then you look at it and you say, okay, well, now you understand why Notre Dame is recruiting the state of Texas so much more. And so in the article, I talk about, Georgia is number 3, Texas number 1. Notre Dame hasn't had a lot of success in Florida. So they're focusing more on Texas and Georgia and looking at just the success they've had there. And the thing that I pointed out, if you look at the numbers in the 5 years before Marcus Freeman became part of so I basically count Marcus Freeman as like 22, 23, and then the 24 class. And if you look at the 5 years before, so that's the 17 to the 21 classes, Notre Dame didn't really put as much emphasis in the state of Texas like they should have, in my opinion. And they're offering a bunch more kids. I think it was like 3. I think they landed like 3 kids from the state of Texas in the 5 years before Brian Kelly, or before Marcus Freeman kind of got there. Yeah, it was 4. They landed 2 in 2017 and 2 in 2019. Well, they landed 4 in last year's class alone, and they have 6. They have Leonard Moore in 24, and then they landed Jadarian Price in 2022. So there's a greater emphasis there. We see 3 kids from the state of Georgia in this year's class. You see 3 kids from the state of North Carolina in this year's class, 2 in last year's class. Well, if you look at the 5 years before Marcus Freeman got here, they only signed 3 kids in 5 years from the state of North Carolina. They've signed 6 in the 3 years since Marcus Freeman's got here. You look at the state of Virginia, right? And so if you look at like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, in the 5 years prior to Marcus Freeman getting here, they signed 8 in 5 years. In the 3 years since he's been here, they've signed 9 already. If you look at the Midwest region, they're putting more emphasis on the Illinois area. In Missouri, they signed 3 kids in 5 years from Missouri. They've already got 4 in Marcus Freeman's tenure. Well, then you look at the NFL draft and you start to say, okay, well, why are they doing that? It's because you look at the NFL draft and the states that they're starting to say, hey, we got to get into those. Well, North Carolina was 7th with 46. So we always talk about, well, they got to recruit Ohio. They got to recruit Ohio. In the last 5 drafts, including 2023, the state of Ohio has produced 52 NFL draft picks, which is pretty good. It ranks Ohio 6th, right behind Louisiana, who's 54. Well, guess who's right behind them? Only 6 behind them. It's North Carolina at 46, only 6 behind Ohio. So do you go into Ohio and try to battle the Buckeyes for the top players in the state? Or do you go to North Carolina where you got to battle Duke and Clemson to a degree? Obviously, Clemson will be a battle. Wake Forest, NC State, North Carolina, teams like that. Where are you going to have a better chance of convincing a kid to come play for you? And so they've shifted their strategy, and you're seeing the results really pay off. And so, to me, I think it's smart. I think, and then he asked, where else do you see Notre Dame going in the future? Well, we're already starting to see it, Rob. Arizona. Now, Arizona does not rank real high in the NFL production list because I think we're just now starting to see the impact of the state of Arizona in college. So a lot of those kids are not quite being drafted yet. But you're starting to see more and more and more of those kids come through. That's a state that they're starting to see more emphasis. They're going to continue to recruit the Northeast, but Pennsylvania and Jersey, Pennsylvania especially, is an area that Notre Dame is putting a lot more emphasis in recent seasons. In the 5 years prior to Marcus Freeman coming, they signed 8 players from Pennsylvania, but 4 of those were in the 2017 class, and it was like Robert Hainsey, it was Bo Bauer. No, Bo was 18, so it was Robert Hainsey, it was Kurt Heinisch, it was Josh Lugg, and David Adams in that 2017 class. So like linebackers, D linemen, O linemen, stuff like that. And then they only got 3 guys in the next 4 years. Well, Notre Dame's got 4 or 2 under Kelly, but under Freeman. So they haven't had a ton of success. But what you're seeing with their recruiting strategies, they're starting to try to emphasize Pennsylvania more. Al Golden's probably been to Pennsylvania like 4 times when he goes on the road recruiting. And you're seeing the offensive coaches go there more. You're seeing Freeman go there more. You're seeing them trying to really push in Maryland more. So I think those are 2 areas, Pennsylvania and Maryland, you're seeing it. And look, Maryland has produced more players in the last 5 years in the NFL than Pennsylvania by 1, but 35, just 1 behind Michigan, who's number 9. And they're both ahead of Illinois, is 11th, tied for 11th with Pennsylvania with 34. So you're starting to see them start getting more and more and more. And if you look at like the top 20, Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina are all in the top 16, right, of that ranking. And so you're starting to see, okay, well, if we can go into this region where being in the ACC helps us, you're seeing that be part of the emphasis. But there's other areas as well. St. Louis, as I mentioned, is the state of Missouri, but especially St. Louis, Chicago area, they're starting to put more emphasis on. Arizona, places like that. You're starting to see Pennsylvania, Maryland are areas we're starting to see Notre Dame put a little bit more emphasis on their recruiting. We have a super sticker from Nathan Milton. Thank you, Nathan, very, 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 very much. And then Nathan also asked, Brian, what are your spidey senses say about Gearby Lambert? I don't know what to say about Gearby Lambert. I mean, he doesn't talk to us. He doesn't really talk to anybody. His coaches are incredibly unhelpful when it comes to trying to learn about these kids, like just incredibly unhelpful. And so I really don't know kind of where you are on that one, to be completely honest with you. And I know what people on Notre Dame side feel, but I really don't know. I really don't know where they are on that. Let's get to some more questions here, everybody. We've got some questions here. We got one from Archer452. Said more of a comment. Says this is more about Max actually, but so that was from before. So let me get to Brandon Plesner asks, do you think the staff would take Cahoon and Rezak? Honestly, I don't know, Brandon. I have not had that question asked or answered at this point in time. So I really don't know. Ant VR said, on 3 said JJ McCarthy and Jaden Daniels are better NFL prospects than Sam Hartman. Do you agree? Yes and no. So the no comes from they're both very raw prospects still as passers, especially JJ McCarthy. Jaden Daniels is a really good college quarterback, but I look at him in college in the NFL as more of like a Dorian Thompson Robinson type than I do like a guy that I view as a starting caliber quarterback. I think Sam Hartman's more of a Sam Howell type for me. So I'd probably go with Sam Hartman over Jaden Daniels, probably, but I like Jaden. He's a good player. But they're both veteran guys. Jaden Daniels just hasn't been like super, super productive, in my opinion, as a passer in his career. He showed some promise last year. He's going to have to continue to get better. JJ McCarthy, I would say, is a better NFL prospect simply because the physical tools are so much better. He's taller. He's still got to fill out a lot, but he's got a nice frame. He's got a cannon for an arm, absolute cannon for an arm. And doesn't know where the heck it's going some of the time, but he's still young. I mean, his last year was a true sophomore season, his first year as a starter. So, I mean, he's going to continue getting better. I think some of the hype about JJ McCarthy for the 23 season is too much for me. But if you take out the 23 hype about it and just look at, okay, if he stays and continues to develop, like I've seen people have him as a top 15 NFL. I've seen one had him as a top 10 NFL draft pick next year. I pray that JJ, forget the Notre Dame aspect. I'm just looking at it as an evaluator. I pray that JJ McCarthy's not in next year's draft class. My prayer is that he comes back in 2024 for one more year, because I feel like if he can just get a full 4 years of seasoning and development and of working with Jim Harbaugh, who I do think is a very good quarterback developer, I do. I feel like then he can maybe tap into that potential where he's better making reads, he's better at throwing accurately, there's more consistency, his footwork is better. He's still got a lot of street ball in him. Very talented player, though. So I would say he's a better NFL prospect just because of the physical tools, although Sam Hartman is light years ahead of him when it comes to reading defenses and things like that, and he should be. Sam Hartman's a 6th-year senior. J.J. McCarthy is a true junior. But, I mean, as of right now, that's the reality of where they are. But I think J.J. for sure, I would say, has more more upside, in my opinion. Got a comment from Braden Spader, and I appreciate this, Braden. It says, love the show and what IB does. Thank you for representing them. Indy Nation, giving vital info to the fan base. You are welcome. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that very much. Blake Ham asks, do you think any freshmen in the 2024 recruiting class can come in and immediately compete for starting position other than CJ Carr and Cam Williams? Boy, Blake, it's a little early for that, just because, I mean, these kids are still juniors in high school. It's very early for that. I mean, and even with those two, there's still another year left. I would say Isaiah Canyon, if he makes the kind of progress I think he can make. Micah Gilbert, physically, is a kid that could come in and play right away. I don't know if the need is going to be there, but as far as just being physically ready to play right away, those are guys that I think could play right away. I think Owen Wafel's a guy that might be able to work his way in the rotation early on in his career, maybe even as a freshman. But, talking about a starting position, I mean, I'm not talking about Cam Williams as a starter in college. He's a junior in high school. I'm not quite there yet, Blake, where I'm ready. So he's going to come in and be a starter as a freshman. I mean, he's got some pretty darn good players ahead of him that he's going to have to beat out if he's going to be a starter. I think he can play. I think the focus for me when I'm talking about juniors is more of, is this kid on a projection to be able to help you as a freshman, more so than saying, hey, can this guy start for you? I'm just not sure I feel great about projecting that far, in my opinion. And that's where I feel about that one. Indy Cheat Sheet asks, could you guys give a comp of Cole Mullins and Teddy Rizak with Josh Burnham and Nolan Ziegler? So I'm with you on the Teddy Rizak, Nolan Ziegler one. That one makes a lot of sense. And I think Nolan was a little thicker at the same age, and Nolan was definitely stronger at the same age. There's no doubt. Nolan's a strong kid, and he was a thicker kid. But athletically, there's a lot of similarities. Both fast. Nolan Ziegler's a very fast kid. Play a lot of rover, play some safety, play some receiver. So there's a lot of similarities in regard to the position they play and the things that they do on the football field. So I like the Nolan Ziegler one with Teddy. I don't think Teddy's as thick and as strong as Nolan was at the same age, but I like that comparison. I don't like the Josh Burnham, Cole Mullins one, just because I feel like Josh is a linebacker turned end that is still developing at that position, and is a really twitchy edge guy, stand-up edge guy. Cole Mullins, to me, is more of a viper / field end type of player. Bigger body. Cole Mullins weighs as much now as Josh Burnham needed 2 years at Notre Dame to weigh. Very different type of player. And so I don't love the comp there. Now, I think they'll play a similar position, and so you could comp it that way. But the example I used for Cole Mullins, the player that I comped him, and I had a harder time kind of finding the guy that I really felt made a lot of sense from a body type standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, from a style of play standpoint. A guy that I had to go back a while to find that, but a guy that I really felt made a lot of sense for me was Marcus Smith, who played at Louisville back in the day. 6'3", 250. Really twitchy guy, really, really athletic, explosive guy, powerful guy, could play both end spots. Last year at Louisville, had 18.5 tackles for loss, 14.5 sacks, really similar body types. That's the comp that I thought made the most sense for me. I don't know if you remember Marcus Smith at Louisville, but he's a really good player at Louisville. I don't know what he did in the NFL, but in college, he was a heck of a football player. Really, really good football player. All right, let's get down to some more questions here. Let's go here. Okay, here's the one from Jason DeWilkins. Thank you, Jason. Says, do you see a future opportunity or position future to where Justin Fisher may see some playing time? Yeah, I could see that. I could see Justin Fisher taking, he's not quite as tall as Davis Sherwood, but I could see Justin Fisher kind of having a similar Davis Sherwood role if Davis is, gone by the time and Justin is still around. Sort of a fullback, H-back type of role. I could absolutely see Justin doing that. No question. I also think Justin's going to be a very important player for Notre Dame as a scout team guy. And that's not meant to be funny or insulting. That's important to me. I mean, it's very important to have a good scout team, and they play a big role in getting you ready to win games on Saturdays. They really do. And it's not just lip service or coach talk. I mean, it's legit. If you have a good scout team, you're going to be ready to play on Saturday in a lot of different ways. And so when I look at it, he's a guy that's going to help you there in a lot of different ways, but he's also a guy that to me could help you special teams wise down the road, but then also is sort of a blocking H-back type. I do think there's a role for him in that regard. I really do. Let's get down to a few more here. All right. David Lowe asks, Brian, do you know that Notre Dame gave Sam Hartman a ton of money to come? I've seen that floating around a few times. I've seen that floating around too. It's not accurate. Did he get NIL money? Yeah, he got NIL money because of of his reputation. But no, Notre Dame did not pay him a bunch of money to come. Matter of fact, I was told by a couple people that were involved in the discussions that Notre Dame basically went out with all I'm talking, I was told this by people connected to other quarterbacks and all types of stuff when they got into the portal, that Notre Dame was adamant about saying, we're not going to have NIL conversations with you. If there's NIL money out there for you to have it, go for it, get it and do what you got to do. But when we talk about, you coming here, you're going to come here because you want to be a part of what we're building. And they didn't really dive into a lot of the NIL conversations. Do I think Sam Hartman got NIL money? I do. But I don't think it was something where he got a guarantee from Notre Dame that if you come, we'll pay you X. I don't believe that to be true. I've seen no evidence of that other than, fan bases saying that it was part of the deal. I do know Sam Hartman got NIL money, but I don't think it was because a promise that was made to come to Notre Dame. Being a quarterback at Notre Dame is going to get you NIL deals. It's just a fact. And so certainly that was a benefit to it. Last couple before we get out of here, folks. Antoine Johnson says, Brian, do you feel like the walls are closing in on Notre Dame since the Big Ten has made a peacock deal? Do you feel like the deal makes Notre Dame have less relevant and give them less leverage? No, I don't think so. Look, here's the deal. First of all, okay. So they signed with the Big Ten, right? It's not an exclusive deal, meaning that the NBC only has the Big Ten. Big Ten fans have been coming up with different reasons for why they're squeezing Notre Dame for years. Look, there's other networks that want Notre Dame. Fox wants Notre Dame, right? CBS, I'm told, wants Notre Dame. If Notre Dame reached out to ESPN and was like, hey, we'd like to sign with you guys, ESPN would love to have Notre Dame. So to me, that doesn't mean a thing. I mean, if NBC doesn't want Notre Dame, great. I think most Notre Dame fans will be very happy to leave NBC. Their coverage stinks. They don't do a good job. I mean, you're going to find out as a Big Ten fan very soon that NBC's coverage of college football blows. It blows. So the only thing that Antoine that would squeeze Notre Dame out is if all of a sudden the other networks weren't interested, in my opinion. And so I don't know quite what your next comment made, but believe me, the reason Notre Dame is floating out the money that they're demanding from NBC is because they know someone's going to pay it. That's the reality of it. They've been in. Here's the thing: these negotiations have been going on for years. They knew what year this contract ended. These have been going on for years. So Notre Dame's not feeling squeezed. The walls aren't closing in. They're not going to feel a need to join the Big Ten. They may feel like, you know what, screw NBC, we're going to go somewhere else. Maybe they do. I don't know. I hope so. I mean, look, here's the thing. I hope that NBC is squeezing Notre Dame out. I do. I pray that Notre Dame goes somewhere else. I would love to see Notre Dame go to CBS. Love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, I hope NBC does make that stupid business decision to force Notre Dame out, because they're not going to have the Big Ten exclusively. They're going to have a night game. It's basically what happened in the NFL. They pretty much got squeezed out of all the major NFL deals because they're not good at business and their production stinks. And so they get the Sunday night game? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Then the last one from Nathan Milton here, and we're gonna wrap up after this. A lot of great questions today, everybody. I really appreciate y'all very, very, very much. Nathan says, Brian, hypothetically, you can watch Notre Dame football, but no other college football games, or you can watch all college football games except Notre Dame. What do you choose? I mean, that's an easy one because I'm a Notre Dame fan. I mean, so if I'm just talking about as a fan, it's Notre Dame. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And watch Notre Dame. I mean, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I would always pick Notre Dame. As far as my job, I mean, it would be hard for me to do my job if I only could watch Notre Dame games, but I'd still choose that because deep down, I've never hidden this fact, and I've never hidden the fact that I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'll never hide it. Why? I'm gonna be honest about it. I've told people I'm a Michigan basketball fan growing up. Don't care. That's who I like. That's who I followed. Doesn't affect my job, but if we're talking about what would I what would I have to give up to do my job? I mean, I can't do my job if I don't watch Notre Dame. And then as a fan, I'd want to watch Notre Dame. So both of those scenarios, I would always pick Notre Dame. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't enjoy college football as much. I wish all fans are this way, and every fan base is this way to a degree. You spend so much time only focusing on your team, and then you've got these really strong opinions about other teams who you've never watched, other than they play your team. I think everybody should always watch all types of college football games. How do you know where you are as a program if you're not watching everybody else? And so I think that's kind of where I would be. Antoine, I can't believe you called me a traitor. I'm saying, like, you're a Michigan fan. You should that should be a connecting moment for us, right? Come on, man. I've shared this story before. I grew up, actually, it wasn't in the Fab Five. The Fab Five is where I was sold, but I actually started following Michigan back in 88 when they made their 88, 89, when they made their first championship run under Glenn Rice, Ramil Robinson, Lloyd Vaught, all those guys. Because I didn't follow Notre Dame. I never watched Notre Dame basketball. It was never on TV where I was growing up. It was either Ohio State or Michigan, but I loved Syracuse back then, like the Billy Owens teams. Adrian Autry was like my favorite point guard when I was a kid. And I just loved college basketball. I mean, I remember those Arkansas teams in the 80s were a ton of fun to watch, Oklahoma. But I was like, I want to have a favorite college basketball team. I had a favorite college football team, and Notre Dame was always prominent because I love football more. And I loved Florida State's baseball team because I saw them on TV once and I thought their uniforms were cool. I thought their hats were really cool. I mean, I was like, 10. And then I watched that year that was the year of the tournament. I watched them in the NCAA tournament. So almost every game. I saw Glenn Rice just be an absolute monster. And I was like, yeah, I'm a Michigan fan. I thought that big block M on their jersey was kind of cool, or on their shirt was kind of cool back then. But I always hated Michigan's football team. Always hated Michigan's football team. And I don't really follow college basketball that much anymore, so I wouldn't necessarily call myself a fan of Michigan anymore at all in basketball because I just don't follow college basketball anymore. But that was my team growing up. And then the Fab Five was like, okay, I'm done. That's my squad. There's no doubt. But I mean, if I can only watch one thing, it's Indy football, and it's a no-brainer. But I would be a little sad because I love watching college football. I was on there today downloading some all 22 film. I download y'all are gonna love this because it's gonna be on the message board. I'm gonna do a film breakdown of a lot of the new opponents. But I downloaded. Let me see how many games I downloaded today. Let me go to. I downloaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Sacramento State games today. Because I'm going to dive into their film. Obviously, the new head coach at Stanford, Troy Taylor, was at Sacramento State last year. So I'm going to dive into some of his film. Downloaded a bunch of TCU films. So I can dive into some stuff that, break down what I expect Clemson's offense to look like now that Garrett Riley is there. But I love watching college football, man. It's a great sport. I obviously Notre Dame is my deal. But, when you look at it and you realize there's so much good football out there. Notre Dame's my team, but there's a lot of good football out there. You say, man, I just really enjoy watching college football. But if I had to pick, I'm always going to pick my squad. I'm always going to pick Notre Dame. There's no doubt. It's what I've always loved to watch Notre Dame. Just as a kid, just watching those gold helmets shine and just what they stood for, and just the physicality, the athletes, the head coach. I fell in love with the head coach. Lou Holtz was like, guy that I kind of was a role model from afar for me when I got into coaching and things like that. So it's always going to be Notre Dame. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. I want to thank you all very, very much. Again, I'm going to ask that y'all keep Ryan and his family and his wife and baby in your prayers. Please do that for me. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. And, hit that like button, folks. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. And sign up for the message boards if you haven't already done so. boards.irishbreakdown.com. You're definitely going to want to be there with us for sure. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff. I have 2 film breakdowns on there where I actually have cut-ups where I draw the play, but then also actual clips of the plays that you can see. Really, really, think people in the chat will tell you, I think they're really good stuff. I explain what you're seeing, break it down, and just really try to dive in the X's and O's. We're going to do some of that stuff on here, but it's easier to do it on there. And I also want to start doing some more content that's only for our premium subscribers, because the people that are paying to be a part of that deal. So we'll definitely you'll definitely want to check that out, and you find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. $4.99 a month is all. $40.99 for a year. If you want to join because you want to support us more financially, we do have the Booster Club. You can join the Shamrock Blue or Gold Club. If you join the Shamrock or Blue Club, and you sign up, you get a free IB Club mug. They only go to Booster Club members. If you sign up for the Gold Club, which is the biggest one, it's the biggest part of our Booster Club, then you obviously would get not only a year membership, but you would also get a free IB Club shirt and an IB Club mug. So definitely want to check those out as well. So thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll talk to you again very, very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.